We'll call this meeting to order of March 20th, 2018. And Supervisor Zaragoza, lead us in the pledge, please.
Yes, sir. Please join me.
Pledge first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, Rose, if you can keep this thing in order, will you please go, or Lori, do the roll call, please?
Supervisor Zaragoza.
Here.
Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Bennett. Supervisor Parks. Here. Supervisor Boyd.
Here. And we'll do the minutes of the board meeting March 13th, 2018. We have a motion.
So moved.
We have a second. I'll vote. Mr. Powers will do agenda review, please.
Thank you, Chair Foy. Item number 4, opening official summary of minutes provided. Item 11, CEO's Office retirement contribution rates. A revised Exhibit 1 has been submitted. Item 16, Public Works Watershed Protection District. Approval to execute 4 agreements finding that an emergency exists requiring immediate construction. A revised board letter has been presented. Additionally, agenda page 5 has been revised to reflect the change in the board letter. Item 26, CEO's Office, acceptance of the 2018-19 Budget Development Manual. A revised Exhibit 2 has been submitted. And finally, there's an addendum agenda item 35, closed session, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. And that's it.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments on this at all? No? We're good? We have a motion. We have a second. Please. Okay. And we'll have a vote. And then we'll move on to our moment of inspiration. I'd like to introduce Patricia Schultz of she was the executive director of ARC and Ventura County. Okay. And also Jared.
Yes, Jared Bloomfield and Mark
Drew.
Maxwell.
Okay. That's wonderful. Come on up.
Good morning, everyone. I am speaking to you on an iPad provided to me by Voice Discovered, a digital literacy program I participate in at ARC program. I joined the ARC on Arcade Drive in Ventura a little over 4 years ago. When I first started, I was extremely shy, always keeping to myself and never interacting with anyone else. In time, I started to create my shell. On good days, I would participate in the activities I enjoyed, but did not have a way to talk with my friends, as my vocabulary and my ability to speak words are limited. A little over a year ago, I started working with a Voice Discovered, and that is literally what happened to me. I discovered my voice through the use of an iPad. I can talk with everyone else and be part of the communicating world now. I am able to return from a fun-filled weekend with my family and share what I did with my friends. I can now interact with people around me, telling them about something I enjoy, and asking them questions about how they feel about things too. I am just starting to learn to communicate using my iPad. My ARC staff, Mark, helps me put my thoughts into sentences. I'm learning to pick out words on my own and navigate my speech app. I'm making lots of progress, but there is still a lot to learn. All of this has opened up my world to a whole new level of friendships, and I am even using more speaking words now on my own, and I feel more confident. Because of this, my friends nominated me for Participant of the Year at Arcade, a great honor for me. Preparing for this talk, I interviewed some of my friends at Arcade and asked them what inspires them, and these are a few things they said. Anissa said she is inspired when her friends are supportive and always there for her, and she appreciates it when people are open-minded if she needs to ask for help. Roman is inspired by the oceanography class that he attends at Ventura College, and by living near the ocean in Oxnard. Triana told me that she is inspired by her friends, and that she thinks when you believe in yourself and do what your heart desires, you can inspire others. Carly is inspired by her parents who taught her to be independent and to live a better life, and that she enjoys volunteering in the community with the elderly and working with animals. All in all, I interviewed 30 people, and over half said they're inspired by their friends or family. What has inspired me is to be able to communicate more with people, like giving this moment of inspiration to you this morning. I hope my words have helped to inspire some of you today. Thank you.
Wow.
Excellent job. Mr.
That's-
Chair,
Yes.
that was very inspirational. That was absolutely fantastic. What an outstanding effort, and using the technology has really helped tremendously. Very, very good. You did an outstanding job. Thank you so much for the inspirational
Yes.
speech today. Thank you.
Wow.
It's so wonderful to see the use of technology this way and being able to help people to express themselves. We see it in a lot of different ways, but this is just wonderful.
This is wonderful, yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank my office and Melody, who that's a wonderful thing. So thank you, wow. All right, then we'll get on to just the normal stuff. Just not the things like that. Okay, consent items. We have items 11 through 18. And-
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think item 11 is, I think, really important, and I know that Mr. Powers is probably going to share that next week, but can you give us a little bit more information on that, Michael, on the contribution rates, for our retirement, from our retirement board? And I think that's really good news.
Certainly, Supervisor Zaragoza. So yes, these are the rates and the results of the actuarial analysis presented to the Becerra Board. And I see Linda Webb, the administrator here. Thank you for being here. Yeah, overall, good news. The funding ratio went from 84.9 to 86.9%, which is, especially these days when you're seeing that trend other ways in other systems like CalPERS, that's very positive. As well, the rate went down from overall the combined rate 27.52 to 27.09% of payroll. So, some positive trends.
So our funded liability is much better now.
It's
than-
improving.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of performance in the market, but also I believe the 15 and 20-year amortization periods where the county is paying down the unfunded liability more quickly, frankly, than most pension systems.
Excellent report, and thank you so much, sir.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or anything? No? Okay, then we'll have a motion.
Second.
And a second. It's not working. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on then to our public comments, and I think I have one. Michael Feinstein? Sir? We have 3 minutes?
3 or that's 5? Oh, 3?
3. All right, you're up.
Is it 3 or 5?
3.
It is 3, okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Michael Feinstein. I'm a former mayor and city council member from Santa Monica, co-founder of the Green Party of California, and a 2018 candidate for Secretary of State. I'm here to share a plan for electing the state legislature that I'm campaigning on and how that would affect your county. I really believe that for our government to work, that we need to have the diversity of California at the table of our democracy. And currently, California has the worst per capita representation in the United States. The size of our state legislature was set in 1879 when we only had 865,000 people. Today, we have almost 1 million per state Senate district and 40 million statewide. So if we had kept that same ratio from 1879, we would have a state legislature of 5,000 people. I'm recommending 500 in the following manner. Half the seats elected from much smaller single-seat districts by ranked choice voting, which is what they use in San Francisco, Oakland, and other cities where voters are empowered to rank their choices. Instead of just voting for one person, they can rank their choice. If their first choice doesn't get elected, their second or third choice gets transferred, and ultimately somebody gets a majority. The other half of the legislature, and this is how it affects your county, I'm recommending would be elected from multi-county, multi-winner districts by proportional representation. We're generally familiar with systems of proportional representation from European democracies where like-minded voters win seats in proportion to the extent that their views are held. So if 20% of the voters have a point of view, they win 20% of the seats. So what I'm suggesting here is that Ventura County would be part of a 3-county region with LA and Orange County. And the reason for that is that a lot of the reality from a public policy standpoint, from a reality standpoint, is that we live in a state of regions, and we live in larger economic, transportation, environmental regions, and yet we don't elect people to Sacramento based upon public policy discussions on a regional basis. You have Supervisor Parks at SCAG, and SCAG discusses these issues, and then you try and lobby your state legislature, but the voters don't actually get to discuss those kind of issues directly and send people to Sacramento upon that basis. One great example are the RENA numbers, your Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers. That doesn't happen from a public policy perspective. So in the end, we end up having public policies coming from Sacramento that haven't really been fleshed out in a regional public policy discussion basis, and then they affect us. All these bills that we're getting right now on housing is one good example on that. So although you can't take action on this today, what I'm hoping is that you will give direction to your staff to look at this model, and ultimately the state legislature would need to put it on the ballot for a public vote. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the understanding of that. Thank you. I think that was our only public comment? Yep. All right, so we'll move on to board comments. You want to go? No.
Yeah, no. I wanted to mention, I have a slide if we can show it. I was fortunate to attend the Local Government Commission conference last weekend, and one of the panels was regarding the disasters that we've had and recovery, and it was a panel of all elected officials. And I thought this slide really stuck out in the sense that the Santa Rosa fires, the Tubbs fire, went almost exactly along the exact same route as it did in 1964. And what you see in gray there, if you haven't seen this slide before, is the increased amount of housing that you see in gray. And so they obviously had the worst damage in terms of fire damage in history. And as you can see, a lot of that is because in that same area there's now a lot more housing, and that gets into the concept of building into the wildland interface. And because of that, I think you're seeing more damage. Also, as we have seen, because of the impacts of weather and climate change, there's what took 2.5 days in 1964 to do that burn took 4 hours in 2017. Sorry. Thanks for showing that slide. It was a really good panel because it looked already at what things need to be done differently in the future. And as we're looking at having also had some incredible devastation from the fires, we also have the ability to look to Santa Rosa and what happened in Northern California. Spoke with a supervisor there who actually lost her home, a supervisor in Sonoma, and just letting her know because of their experience we learned. And I think we actually had lives saved because we saw what happens if you don't evacuate, and we had people getting out of their homes when they found out about the fire. Still, they were seeing an evacuation rate of something like 15% on a mandatory evacuation. So that is very concerning. But just a couple of things that they brought forward. We also heard from Doss Williams on Montecito and the debris flow there. And he pointed out that all the damage, all the loss to property and lives happened within 100 feet of the creek. And that if we had kept to standards that didn't allow development within 100 feet of the top of bank, you wouldn't have as many people impacted. And it gets to that same kind of thing that we're seeing in Santa Rosa. So we realize as policymakers, land use deciders, that when we make decisions that put people with potentially in harm's way, we need to certainly consider things like setback. And I know we're going to have a little bit of discussion on that at 1:30. Other items that they brought forward too is certainly we're talking about how we can do better in terms of warning people in advance. They're going back to looking also at sirens, like I think we had with Matahaha Dam at one point. So these are things that obviously we'll discuss. In addition to going to that conference, I was also able to meet with students at Oak Park High School. They did a walkout, but they did it in a way that I think was, very lawful, very respectful, and worked with the school, and the school provided an area for them to all get together. I was able to speak to the students, and my main message was to empower the students. As our generation looks to their generation, they're speaking out strongly for something that's very close to our hearts in terms of gun violence at schools. And I just thought it was great for the school district to empower the students, to allow them to come together in this lawful way, and just really encouraging the students to, this may be their first political act, and to continue to speak out. One thing that they did, which I thought was fantastic, is they registered students to vote on campus. And that was giving them a real tangible thing that they can do to create the change that they want. So I was delighted to see that occur. We have obviously faced some terrible gun violence, and just over the weekend we had Parisi Siddiqui killed tragically at the Oaks Mall, and this is from domestic violence, and it just goes to the shock of being able to, people who have violent tendencies, which the paper indicated today was the case with this ex-husband, that people, as we talked about at the board when we passed our recommendation and letter to our legislature, that we're concerned about people with mental illness being able to access, semi-automatic military-style rifles, as well as people with violent tendencies. So, again, just a real tragedy, and I'm asking that our board close in honor of Parissa today. I think I'll end with that and close my comments with that. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank the Behavioral Health Department. We had a cannabis forum for our district, which we invited city council members, our attorneys, sheriffs, police, and to make sure that we're talking as a district as to what is going on as it relates to policies. Many questions that we have on this board, we have in our city councils areas as well. And I think as good government, it is important that we are all talking about policies, how public health, our children's safety, packaging, licensing, and so forth. So what I'm handing out to you is our packet that Behavioral Health provided. And what we had was a policy snapshot. So we mapped out actually what each city is doing as it relates to cannabis, both on the medical side and recreational side and delivery. Then we also talked about key roles as it pertains to alcohol and the policies that were placed for alcohol and what things that we need to look for in cannabis. We have many cities that are stating to do nothing. And then we also have cities that are wanting to do distribution, manufacturing. And some cities wonder what the other cities are doing, or what are you looking at, or how you're going about things. So we have a handout that's establishing a new local medical cannabis industry. We have public health priorities. And I really want to thank our very own Linda Ash from County Council, who provided excellent information as to it relates to the laws that have been passed by our legislation, so that everyone understands. We had James Mosier that talked about behavioral health and understanding what happens, you know, from the body and so forth. And then we have Bill Ayub, who's our Assistant Ventura County Sheriff, who's talking about how do we regulate. You know, if there's an incident, how is the sheriff's going to deal with things? And I think that that's something important as policy is put in place, is how is it implemented? You know, we can make policy, but how is it really implemented? And how does it affect our community and so forth? I was a little bit timid of having this conversation with our community leaders, because it is, you know, we haven't done anything like this in about 100 years. Except for alcohol. But I have gotten really great feedback. I want to say thank you to Mike Powers for attending, Janice Gardner and Dan Hicks. Thank you so much for all your putting it together with Matt Guthrie and my staff. I have actually gotten people to say, we got to do that again in 4 or 5 months when it changes regulation. And also, I've got a couple other ideas, like water. We need to talk about water and how we're dealing with it on a city aspect. So I thought it was a great chance for District 3 to come together and say, okay, what are the needs for our cities and county, and really work together. I know we do that on many different levels with Ventura County, but it was excellent. I just want to say thank you to everyone for that. And in speaking of water, we have our Fillmore-Piru Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. It's a very long word, but it's very important. What we're doing right now, based on the state mandates, we are creating boundaries that snap our basin lines to Santa Paula's groundwater sustainability basin, and then also to the County of Los Angeles. And this is something that we have to do. We've had public forums on it, and I wanted to make sure that everyone here knows, because if we don't do it as a body, a governing body, then the county will have to do it. And so we're really trying to step up and make it less expensive for those to get the same plan that's mandated by the state. In addition, we had our San Francisco Dam plaque dedication in the Fillmore last Saturday. We had a fabulous opening ceremony and dedication of the commemorative plaque. It will be on the plaque, and it'll be on a brownstone boulder that will be located at the Bardsdale Cemetery, where many of those that passed away at that incident 90 years ago lay to rest. And so we'll remember the survivors and the many victims that are buried at the Bardsdale Cemetery. So I want to thank everyone who put that together. That was a lot of organization with both Los Angeles County and Ventura County. Then I adjourn on the memory of this list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to report that my staff members, Rod and Tracy, attended the gun violence observance at Channel Islands High School in Oxnard, honoring the 17 Parkland students that were killed in Florida, and to honor the cause against school violence. I had Rod read a letter on my behalf, and there was couple of thousand students there at Channel Islands that attended. They're very well behaved too for the 17 minutes that were there. At the same time, Lourdes and I attended a presentation. We made a presentation at Channel Islands University for the students there in the political science majors, and the topic that I spoke on was Insight, a look at local politics, and that was a great event too at the university. Additionally, on Thursday, I attended the Ventura County Grand Jury Open House. My staff and I were given a tour of their offices at the Grand Jury, and Judge Murphy made a great little presentation there and spoke about what the Grand Jury does and the members and the hours that they put in, and how to become a Grand Jury member too, if you like to do that. and they're doing an outstanding job. Then Lourdes also, my staff member, attended the Ventura County Office of Education Migrant Program Speech Contest at Oxnard College. And she was one of the judges, and we had over 200 students that participated and competed on a regional basis, and some will be attending the State of California speech contest. Meanwhile, I also attended the LULAC Leadership Brunch at the Pierpont Inn here in Ventura. There was Assembly Member Monique Limon was presented with a plaque honoring her for the assistance that she did with the Thomas Fire, and also Jackie Irwin was there, and Mr. Mike Powers was there, and Rosa was there, and Veronica was there, and half of the county was there. Excellent presentation. So anyway, that's basically all I have, and it was a great weekend.
That is very nice.
And I'd like to adjourn in memory of the folks on this list.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Let me adjourn on the people on this list. And Supervisor, you had said something earlier in regards to warnings, and with this rain and all the other stuff, I hope people are paying attention. Who knows where this is going to go, and I appreciate the county putting out and giving that information to the paper so people are paying attention to that. So thank you. Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Foy. Just a couple items. Just to let you know, your board know that there are target meetings, budget meetings going on right now with our Catherine and Kay and the fiscal teams of all the departments and the department heads and leadership. We're right in the heart of it. Also want to welcome our HCA team who moved into the lower plaza here, right in our HOA building, so welcome to them. We attended a retirement farewell for our friend Jim Dembowski, and it was really festive and heartfelt, and it was really...
I forgot about Jim.
How is that possible?
He's going to be honored today.
He's going to be honored today, so more to come on that. Want to let you know also that Startup Weekend, this will be our third time participating. That's going to be held April 20 through 22nd. That's Friday through Sunday. Corporate Games opening ceremony is March 24th, 10 o'clock at Kimball Park in Ventura. That's the opening ceremonies for the Corporate Games. And the Greenbelt Wave 27 graduation being held on April 24th at 10:30 right here in this boardroom. That's Wave 27. And then lastly, with the upcoming impending storm, I thought it'd be good if your board's okay with it to have our Director of OES, Kevin McGowan, give us an update on forecasts and preparation. So Kevin, take it away. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Foy, board members, Mr. Powers. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll try and keep it quick. We activated our EOC this morning to prepare for the upcoming storm. The forecast is pretty significant. This should be probably one of the more significant storms we've seen over the last couple years. So if you remember back to last February, we had a pretty long duration storm. This one is even more intense than that one. So we're competing with two factors on this storm. One is the hourly intensity or 3-hour intensity rates, which usually are the cause of triggering debris flows. And then we're also dealing with a long duration event that has significant rain totals. So we're seeing anything in the foothills of Ventura in the 3 to 6 range. We're seeing everything up in the mountains up to 9 to 10 inches. And so those are really significant rain totals for basically a 48 to 72 hour event. And so what we've done already is we've coordinated through operational area-wide coordination, also evacuation coordination, specifically for a bunch of different hotspots or hazard areas, not only within the Thomas Burn area, but countywide. Those coordinations began over the weekend and continued on through even today. In addition to that, we redistributed more sandbags to all of our fire stations and some of the more prone communities. So that began yesterday, and a considerable amount of sandbags have already been delivered. And that will continue on till today while resources are available. But once the rain starts really picking up, we expect that the sandbag distribution will kind of taper off on our side of the delivery. But people are still encouraged to go to local fire stations to receive sandbags on their own in county unincorporated areas, and then in city areas they can visit their city websites to find where their distribution locations are. And then lastly, we'll continue to have the EOC activated for the duration of this event, and we'll be providing situation reports to the board, the CEO's office, and all of the other stakeholders countywide. And with that, I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Supervisor Long has a question, I think.
Thank you. I was contacted just yesterday in regards to the homeless. Wondering if they have coverage in the evacuation centers, because I think we're closing down the cold weather, or what is the status of that, if you know?
So our Red Cross emergency shelters that have been activated because we have evacuation orders in effect are accessible to anyone. They're inclusive shelters, so there is no determination on what anyone's socioeconomic status is for whether they get into a shelter. The shelters are there for inclement weather, and anyone can receive services at those. Right now, the shelter that's activated is at the Ventura City College, and then we have additional shelters on standby if the need arises. As far as I know right now, and I'll get back to the board about the winter weather shelter, as far as I know, it was still it doesn't work in concert with the Red Cross shelter.
On the winter shelter, I got an update from Tara Caruth that it was running short of funds, but it did receive some additional funds, so it will be open through March.
Okay, that was nice to hear, and thank you very much, because we have that situation as it is, and it was a question, well, which one I would go to and all that kind of stuff. So I want to also appreciate the information getting out. I do want to make sure that we do communicate about our county next to us, Santa Barbara County, to ensure that if people are trying to get to work and what we've hit before, that we do what we need to. And thank you to all the volunteers that are helping you in the utilities and so forth. I heard search and rescue is just coming out pretty soon, so thank you very much.
So we have Caltrans in our Emergency Operations Center. There's Caltrans in the Santa Barbara County Emergency Operations Center, and the two EOCs are coordinating. So we should have pretty good real-time information on those different corridors, whether it be the 101, 150, or the 33, on the status of those road closures or if they're still open. So, and all that information will be available on vcemergency.com.
Kevin, Supervisor.
Yeah, I just wanted, a great question that you ask. While we have shelters available for people who are homeless, it does seem that we often have situations where the homeless are along the creek beds and along the river beds. If there's any kind of way that we can do outreach to maybe even transportation, thinking with either our Human Services Agency or the Healthcare Agency, because they are calling this, bigger storm than we've had in a long time, and potential flooding, and that is always such a, concern to public safety, particularly trying to get people, when it's too late, trying to evacuate them. So being proactive on that is really a good idea, I think. So just kind of throw that out there. I know we have RISE teams in the Healthcare Agency, Human Service Agencies, and I know a lot of the cities know where people are camping out. Just being able to do that kind of a brush through, going and checking. I can think of an area in my district, but checking those areas would probably be a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that. South Bank over in Oxnard too, we have a lot of homeless there too, that it's important that we check those individuals there too. And you say that mandatorily we're going to evacuate here in Ventura. Did I hear that? Or
there are mandatory and voluntary evacuations in place right now. The the mandatory evacuations right now are in unincorporated areas. It's in Casitas Springs, Nye Road, the southern portion of Casitas Springs and Nye Road, Matilaha, North Fork, and La Conchita. And then all of the other evacuation areas right now are voluntary evacuations to include the city. We're in coordination with everyone. We're actually going to do another evacuation coordination meeting later today and assess the need to either expand evacuation areas or elevate them to mandatory.
Santa Barbara has at 1 o'clock p.m. today, mandatory evacuation.
Ours go into effect at noon today.
Also, okay.
When are you expecting the weather to really start to hit?
Great
I know you're not the
question.
weatherman, but
We have been on enough weather briefing calls where I feel like a meteorologist. We should in Ventura County start seeing rain in the early afternoon time frame. It really starts picking up in the evening. And then we see kind of this first wave of intense rain in the middle of the night. So one thing I would really like to emphasize to the public is if you're going to go to sleep tonight and you're in one of those hazardous areas, keep your cell phone next to you.
Yes.
Be prepared to leave at a moment's notice. Because the intense rain that could trigger debris flow is really going to be occurring between like the 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. window. And then we have another kind of lull. It will still continue to rain, but it won't be that really heavy debris flow intensity. And through Wednesday morning, and then it starts picking up again Wednesday afternoon, all the way through Wednesday night again. And then it tapers off through Thursday. So Tuesday in the middle of the night, and then Wednesday late afternoon through the middle of the night are two kind of really intense waves that we're putting a lot of focus on.
Maybe they're better off not even staying at home for that.
We're encouraging everyone, whether you're in mandatory or voluntary areas, to leave.
That's right.
Well,
and
closing some schools too, right?
That's
Right, City of Ventura School is having minimum day today in lieu of the weather. And then also to make sure if your phone is by that they've registered for VC Alert
VC
or
Alert.
Nixle. I've been getting the alerts. You could register for each zip code if you want. And that's been very helpful. So thank you.
And with this rain in Santa Barbara, I know it's not all your territory, but I know it's part of, are they expecting more of those big mud flows coming across the road? Or are people going to be stuck like they were? Or should people be, I know in the morning it may already happen, I can't get across up to my job or something. Do we know anything about that?
Well, the forecast is lining up that the intensities that we're seeing are over into the Montecito and southern Santa Barbara County area. So the probability of events occurring in both of our jurisdictions from our weather coordination with the National Weather Service, the probabilities are the same. So I would say that the potential for events to occur in either jurisdiction is there, and they're doing their process. They've been heavily engaged in evacuations and stuff also.
Okay. All right, well, great. Appreciate the information. Hopefully people are listening here. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mike, any more? That's it? Okay. Well, great. Thank you very much. A lot going on. All right, so we got a little time. Let's go to our regular agenda. What is it? 26. 26. Catherine, she's come down to see us with a big smile. Love it. Things must be just so wonderful. It's good.
Yeah. Good morning, Chair Foy, CEO Powers, members of the board. For the record, my name is Catherine Rodriguez at the County Executive Office. The item before you today is the recommendation for the board to accept the Budget Development Manual for 2018-19, including those internal service rates in Section 5 and 6. And to those approval for those rates will coincide with the final board adoption of the budget for 2018-19. Along with that is to authorize our CEO to make changes as necessary. Also in the recommendation is for the budget calendar for 18-19, starting with the mid-year budget adjustments for next week, and then the department budget presentations in May, and finally the budget adoption in the hearings in June. The Budget Development Manual is actually the starting or guideposts to establish the procedures and those rates that will be used as assumptions for the development of the departmental budgets. Highlights include the prudence and the diligence of our internal service funds, namely General Services Agency, and information technology for the 6th year. They have come into very modest or decent rate, especially for this 18-19. They came in at the flat rate, so that's commendable. We have increases with, as listed in our Budget Development Manual. Our risk insurance is increased by 2.5%, and our workers' comp rate by 17% to comply with the state regulatory requirements for the reserve levels, and to ensure that we have appropriate reserves in our net positions. I think that's about it, and this is to keep keeping in the board's principles to keep our reserves at appropriate levels. I would like to thank Ms. Kay Mand for the coordination, and Mike Guamazao for coordinating the information and the budget development manual along with the Auditor Controller's Office.
Right.
Thank you.
And I don't want this to go unsaid. I know how much work you guys go through to go through this process, and it's a lot. Just this development manual alone is 143 pages long, and there's just a lot that goes in. I appreciate you and your team, what they do to make sure this county's in good shape, so thanks.
I agree on the timeline. I appreciate it very much. I know that our department heads are really looking at this, and sometimes there's hard decisions that have to be made. But the best of the community, because it is our constituents' dollars, and we have to spend them as wisely as possible. So I appreciate the due diligence that you're doing to really comb through and make sure we're doing the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. You know, that's our roadmap, you know, the budget. So thank you for all the work that you're doing so far, and I know looks good so far.
Mike?
I do echo the comments, and the good that we're able to hold down where we can. And one area that we're looking that we can't do so much about is the workers' compensation. And part of that is because medical expenses they're saying are increasing. And I'm just wondering, is that due, for example, to older employees, or what is it that's driving the increased costs?
Right. The calculation for that increased cost is based on 30% experience, along with the confidence level at the 80% level. As you know, the medical inflationary increases has gone up to about 6%. So along with that, those added all together keeping up with the reserve requirement has had a significant increase for this.
And I'm just kind of looking at that 6.5% increase since last year in medical expenses, and just that's kind of where I was focusing. If there's some way that we can address that, and through prevention, or it's just a result of the population itself.
Right. It's a population in itself, and then the outside pricing for those medical expenditures. So
and when somebody gets hurt, they go to the doctor, they go to something. Healthcare costs are going up, and that costs us more up. And there's a lot to workers' comp. Yeah.
Well, I would say also Chuck and his team do a great job of injury prevention, education, and training, constant, and they're active out in all the departments. So there's a lot of work going on, just to your point, Supervisor.
And the wellness
trying
program.
to reduce injury.
Exactly right.
Mr. Chair, and also the excellent wellness program that we have here.
Yeah, we want to keep people as healthy as we can.
Exactly.
Healthier people have less workers' comp claims. There's no question about it. And we got to, there's all the other parts that go into workers' comp that make up this whole thing. But I agree with what you said. Mike Chuck and his team do a tremendous job putting this all together. And you're just reflecting what you have to deal with in your budget. And the market's getting a little bit tougher on some of this. So, okay, Mike.
Just one quick comment. Catherine mentioned it, but these ISF rates, we can sort of gloss over it pretty quickly, but it gets a lot more interesting if you don't lower them, because it can really eat up a large part of budgets, right? I think the departments, I see the auditor nodding his head. I mean, it can be $1 million or so to some of the larger departments, and that's deputies on the street, nurses on the floor, social workers in the field. So I just want to not take that for granted. IT's been lowering them, even keeping them flat like GSA. If you think about it, we've had wage increases, materials increases, and so forth. So the fact that they're able to mitigate that and come in flat is really extraordinary, and that leads to more services on the street. So,
And I want to say that's a good point. We don't want to gloss over that, because these people also in these leadership roles and their whole teams have been doing this for a couple, 3 years now. And so it's harder as it gets, as it goes on. It gets harder and harder and harder to do it. So it means that people have to really be creative and find new ways and use technology, all the different things to help reduce the cost. So I think it's commendable that when she gets these, that she can say this, that's good, because it's all based on this whole team out here that's doing that. Yeah.
Well, and then also you have the state and federal mandates that perhaps don't come with the funds necessary to get the job done.
Yeah.
So that gives you a whole nother range of what we have to do with our budget. We've seen that many times, and I want to make sure we don't forget that as well.
Okay.
one last point, if I may, Chair. On the retirement piece, I know we talked about it earlier with item 11, but just to cover it again on this item, good news from the actuarial report from Becerra on your board's agenda today, that the retirement rate went down from 27.5 to roughly 27.1, somewhere in that region. And so it's an improving trend. And the funded ratio also increased from 84.9 to 86.9, which again, I want to highlight that because a lot of times it's going the other way, and certainly for CalPERS it is. And so, and that's, you know, performance in the market, but it's also that 15-year amortization period. It hurts. It's like a 15-year mortgage. The county and your board is supporting paying that, but you're paying it down more quickly, and that's keeping that unfunded liability a much more manageable.
But we've been smoothing at 15 compared to 20 and 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And that has a real impact on budgets too.
And while you're just talking little decimal points here and there, it means a huge amounts of funds.
Millions and millions,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Catherine, I'm sure we'll go through with this, and then we'll see you a little bit after your budget in a month or so. Huh?
We'll be back next week.
No, next week, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Interim budget, wow. We'll get to see your smile for a long time. Great. All right. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All right, so thank you. And then real quick, let's just do our correspondence, and we'll go into closed session. I think. Then we'll head to closed session. We have that correspondence. We have a motion. There it is. All right. We'll go into closed session. We're back out for our 10 o'clock. We're going to come back to, all right, we'll call this meeting back to order. We're moving on to item number 19, a presentation resolution proclaiming this is the month of March as National Social Workers Month. Supervisor?
Thank you very much.
Welcome back.
Thank you, and thanks for the indulgence to let me drop in here late to the meeting. We have Barry Zimmerman here, and Guadalupe Marino, and Melody Domate. Could you three all come up? All right, great. I'd like to just very briefly read this resolution and then turn it over to you, Barry. But it's a resolution proclaiming March 2018 as National Social Work Month. Whereas the primary mission of social work profession is to enhance human well-being and meet the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable in society, social workers embody this year's Social Work Month theme: social workers, leaders, advocates, and champions. Social workers are present throughout our society, including the government, schools, universities, social service agencies, communities, the military, and in healthcare and mental health organizations. Social workers are the largest group of mental health care providers in the United States and work daily to help people overcome depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and other disorders so they can lead more fulfilling lives. Thousands of child, family, and school social workers across the country provide assistance to protect children and improve the social and psychological function of children. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in recognition of all the social workers in our community who share this commitment, dedication, and advocacy to improve the lives every single day of our citizens, the Ventura County Board of Supervisors proclaims the month of March 2018 as National Social Work Month and calls upon citizens to join with us in celebrating in support of the social work profession. And I just want to add on a personal note, you know, if you had to pick something that really in one occupation captured the mission of Ventura County, government. What does government do? It protects the health, welfare, and safety And social workers do all three of those things every time they're interacting with people. So thank you very much, and love to hear from you too before I bring the resolution down.
Thank you for the recognition, Supervisor Bennett, and I'm honored as the director of the agency to kind of represent all social workers, but it permeates throughout the community and our county as a whole. You know, there's social workers in almost, you know, in healthcare as well as human services throughout the schools and so forth. And I really call them kind of the unsung heroes. We don't really see. They don't get a lot of recognition day to day, but every day they're working with individuals and families through difficult situations and really making meaningful impact into the community. And it's an honor that we can be a representation of them. Today we have a couple of superstars within the community of social work that have really stepped forward. And in relation, as you know, we've been working with assisting individuals in housing assistance with the Thomas Fire, and so they've done a tremendous job. And this has kind of been a partnership, not only our homeless services, but we needed some desperate help in order to meet the magnitude and the demand associated with the relief of the fire. So we contacted the healthcare agency, in particular the whole person. I don't know if you call it a project, but program. There and said, hey, is there some assistance that you could help us with? And they, without a second thought, said absolutely. And so that was a great help to us and a great partnership on how the county really works together for the benefit of the community. To just give you an indication, about just over 50 individuals and families have been funded with the funds that you've set aside there. 32 have been placed in long-term or permanent housing and are stable in that regard. What that works out to be, to give you context a little bit, that means every third day someone has been placed in stable or long-term housing. So that gives us that kind of the pace in which this program has been operating from its foundation. So we'll hear. I won't take any more time. It's an honor to have Guadalupe and Melody here, and they'll share a little bit of their experience and their work.
Good morning, Chair Foy, members of the board, and Mr. Powers. My name is Guadalupe Moreno. I'm a social worker with a homeless services program, and I've been here with the county for going on 2 years and a few short months. And today, as Barry mentioned, I'm going to be sharing my experience during the Thomas Fire devastation that happened in the county in December. And so one of the things that we did, our program had a really unique position to be able to partner with the Red Cross shelters and outreach service sites, and we were able to go either staff or provide direct outreach to the clients that were utilizing the services. And so we, were able to put people in motels. Whether they were under mandatory evacuation or whether their homes were completely destroyed in the Thomas fires. We were having those initial conversations about what housing would look like, after the fact, and the next plan of action to get them back into permanent and stable housing. In the shelters, we were also able to triage services with the healthcare agency and connect individuals to the mobile clinic that they had there. And once the mobile clinic wasn't there, we were able to reach out to service providers and obtain medical supplies that were needed for individuals that were still utilizing the shelter services. And so one of the key things that stood out to me during the outreach at the shelters was the fact that for the first time, I think I've ever seen, there was people of all ages, races, and socioeconomic backgrounds all housed under a shelter utilizing services at the same time. I talked to folks that were living up in the ritzier parts of town to folks that were in the not so great parts of towns, and they all had one commonality, that they were going through this devastation together. And so it was really amazing to be able to come and extend services as a program to include everyone, individuals who maybe wouldn't meet our income limits initially, to be able to wrap around and do services for them to get them back into housing. So that's one of the key things that stood out to me during my time in outreach there. And my overall experience with the services that were provided during the Thomas fires with the Red Cross shelters were very rewarding. We were able to put our skill sets to use to come alongside individuals going through a very devastating time. And we had colleagues within our department that were also under mandatory evacuation that didn't know what their neighborhood looked like, and the fires were burning in their backyards, and they still came into work and put their social worker hats on, and they were able to extend services and take care of others that were in more dire desperation and need and going through trauma that was completely new to them all. So it was very humbling to be able to work alongside my colleagues and other service providers during such a tragic time that none of us were ever prepared or anticipating. So I thank you for your time and allowing me to share a bit of my experience, and that's it.
Good morning, Chair Foy, members of the board, and Mr. Powers. My name is Melody Damante, and I'm a community services worker with the Whole Person Care Program. As a collaborative effort by the county departments and community agencies, my coworker Raul Lopez and I were selected by our supervisor, Deanna Handel, to report to the Homeless Services Program during the aftermath of the Ventura County fires. We assisted them with a huge influx of homeless families and individuals, and we were taught to identify those families and individuals directly affected by the fires. We provided them with information, resources, and assistance with motels and deposits for new housing. I was assigned to be at the Red Cross shelter during the last week that it was open, and it was humbling to realize that there were so many individuals under one roof, so different from one another, but nevertheless, they all shared one thing in common, which was at the time that they were all homeless. On the last day of the shelter, I spoke with a woman who I discovered had been displaced by the fires but had not yet received assistance. She had nowhere to go, but had made friends with another homeless individual who had offered to let her sleep in her car with her. So although we could not offer that individual with assistance with the funding allocated by the VC fires, she was willing to share what little she had with someone who had lost everything. Under the direction of Chris Russell, I was able to collect the necessary verifications and provide her with a motel stay. It was very rewarding to know that I was able to alleviate some of her worry, and she was very appreciative of what we could do for her. I have been a county worker for over 20 years and have never had to respond to a natural disaster. This was a humbling experience and renews one's outlook on life. You may have everything you need or want today, but it can literally go up in smoke tomorrow. I applaud the community and the county for coming together to provide invaluable resources to all of the social workers of the Homeless Services Program for dedicating so much of their time to listening, counseling, and helping the Ventura County fire victims. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today.
Barry, that's you picked two superstars. That's great. We've heard all this other stuff and first responders, but you don't realize all the other stuff that goes on and people leaving their homes when they're in trouble. And so thank you for all your whole staff has been doing through this whole thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Foy. And we just like to recognize they have great passion for what they do, and that's very characteristic of all our social workers. We have some here, so why don't everyone
stand up, yeah.
That is here participating, and we'll give them recognition.
Should we get them all to stand in the picture? Could you all come down for the picture? Everyone?
Quickly.
I don't.
Balance it out. Half of you on this side. Quickly. Half on that side. There you go. Oh, we got to tighten that. Now turn your shoulders. There you go.
Chris, the other side of Steve. Perfect.
Right there, right here.
All right. Here we go.
Got it, Deborah?
Barry. Hey, Barry, before you go, Mike wanted to make a comment.
Okay.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, please.
Everybody?
It's okay. Well, what I'd say is to the social workers who are here today, when the Thomas fire hit and the board put aside funding, I think there were some who thought, well, maybe we could add staff and that would help out. But the problem with that is that the social worker professionals are so talented and skilled, you can't simply just add more people there. You have to rely on the people that we have and the years of training and skills and experience that you develop in order to do your job. That simply wasn't possible. What that meant was we simply had to ask more from you, some of the busiest people we have. And so I want to make sure that that gets recognized too. All we did was just ask more of you, and you delivered with compassion too. I heard a lot of people say this is one of the most traumatic times in their lives, and you were there from individually comforting them. So just a great big thank you to you.
Thank you for that.
I would also like to just thank you. You have such a big heart, and through your job, it's not just a checking the box, but it's the compassion that you give to our community and the outreach that you do. And we just really appreciate all your efforts. We couldn't do it without you, and thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to thank you so much for the good work, providing housing and having the compassion for the folks that were hurt in this event. And also thank the Red Cross. The Red Cross does a lot of work. And thank you for the excellent work, Barry. Thank you again. And thank you to all the social workers. Thank you so much.
Okay. We're going to move on to item number 20, proclamation of the March 19th through 25th, 2018 of Ventura County Agricultural Week. Thank you.
Hi.
Super.
I'm Mary McGrath, and I'm accepting this for Kat Merrick.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do you want to make a couple comments first, Steve?
Pat, appreciate Supervisor Foy asked me to do this part of the program, and this is the resolution, and so I think it's just like the last time, it's appropriate for me to try to read this, and then we'd love to hear from you about this agricultural week that we have here in Ventura County.
Excuse me?
So I'm going to read this resolution about Agricultural Week, and then we'd like to hear from you about this also. All right. So this is a resolution proclaiming the week of March 19th to 25th, 2018 as Ventura County Agriculture Week. Whereas Ventura County Agriculture Week is a time to reflect on the importance of Ventura County's farmers and ranchers and the county's agriculture industry. And whereas Ventura County farmers and ranchers are truly stewards of the land, they are raising more on fewer acres and competing in a challenging global marketplace, all while also working to protect Ventura County's precious soil and water resources. The agriculture industry is essential to our economy and the way of life in Ventura County. Agriculture has been attracting farmers, ranchers, and farm-related workers since the 1800s. Even with the oil boom in the 1920s, the construction of military bases in the 1940s, and the growth of freeways, subdivisions, and technological industries, agriculture has continued to be the #1 employer in our county. And many of our founding farm families still remain today, with the current generations carrying on their family's legacy and relationship with the soil. Whereas Ventura County Agricultural Week works to inspire students from junior high, high school, and college while showing them they have an opportunity to consider a career in agriculture. Ventura County Agricultural Week's goal is to highlight the important role agriculture plays not only in our county, but the world, and to honor all those who do so much to feed our community and the world. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ventura County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the week of March 19th to 25th, 2018, Ventura County Agriculture Week, and calls upon all residents to join us in this observance. So, Mary, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much. As a part of agriculture myself, many generations, there are many families like my family who make a living out of this, but it's not, you can't just farm. There's so much more to it now. You need to be sustainable. You need to work with pests in a way that's not offensive to the humans that live near them. Water is constantly an issue. You can pick up any magazine or newspaper and read about farming, I think. Maybe it's just my newspapers. But we're very honored to have a week where we can talk more about what we do. I'm excited to host some students next Wednesday at where I work, my ranch, my family's ranch. I know that different events are happening all week. There's a luncheon this afternoon honoring sustainability and a chef. I don't know who yet, but lots of activities going on. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mary. I'm going to come down and present you with this.
Oh, thank you.
Mary, thank you so much for what your family does. I know that many people would like to go to some of these events, and I want to make sure with Kat Merrick, the totallocalvc.com has all the dates and events. We have Meet the Farmer on Thursday night. That's going to be a great event. There's a lot of wonderful things that the ag community is doing to reach out to our community. Food is not only just something we need, but is for the better health. And our county is an ag county, which sometimes people forget on a busy day. And so to make sure that they know that there's so many different ways into how we touch agriculture. It's not just what comes out of the grocery store. So thank you so much for all that everyone is doing. I know the California Women's of Agriculture is involved in this. So many of our farmers are involved in here. So I just ask that our community go to some of these events, learn a little bit of cooking, find out what these farms are that we drive by on the 101 and so forth. They are wonderful people, and we really do need to engage more with them.
Mary,
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you too, and thank you for providing work to thousands of people too here in Ventura County. And as we all know, the ag industry is a $2 billion industry here in Ventura County, and I think it's extremely important for our economy. And thank you for the good work, and thank to all the farmers of Ventura County, and also all the workers that make this county very prosperous. Thank you so much.
It's a big community.
Also, I heard that Total VCs float for the St. Patty's Day won awards.
They did. I think they won the mayor's award.
That's great.
Yeah.
What a wonderful way to celebrate.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Maybe we get a picture with Supervisor.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. I just got a comment from somebody there. It's hard for us to hear unless we're speaking right into our mics, so, okay. Supervisor, you are busy. We got something else for you here. Item number 21. It's your own piece that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
And
I appreciate that we have some other items after this that are time certain and stuff, and I hope we can appropriately recognize Mr. Dembowski's group. But this is something that I've been spending time looking at. Many years ago, Supervisor Kathy Long, before Supervisor Kelly Long arrived, she and I chaired the committee that was working on the 10-year plan to end homelessness. We created a spectrum of things that we needed to do to address the homeless issue here in Ventura County. And we did that in collaboration with the cities, and then that plan went out, and the cities essentially adopted it along with the county. And there are a number of things that we're already doing well in terms of collaboration with the cities and the nonprofit organizations that are working with homelessness. We have the coordinated entry that is out there. We have the Homeless Prevention Fund that is out there. But the one area that we have struggled to actually make movement on is this provision of shelters. And I think that it's, as I look at it, it's because things have many times, it's not only this, but many times things get lost in the gap between what's the county going to do, what's the city going to do. You can see the challenges we had with our conversations about the winter homeless shelter, and our staff's, and so what I think is the way for us to move forward is to try to establish some protocol about how we're going to negotiate with the cities, because it's all about this collaboration with the cities, and it's all about trying to say, we can't get in front of the cities, and the cities can't get in front of us if they want us to help, which the cities usually do, that we ought to have some kind of protocol for, okay, this is essential, this is the basic concept from a policy standpoint that our board supports. Now work the details out and come back. So I'm not trying to lock us into anything here except a conceptual framework for how you could have collaborative conversations with the cities. And so, if you look at these things, it's conceptually, why do we say we'll match the cities? Because we want to say, hey, we'll be equal partners with you. We'll take this responsibility. But we've had this conversation ad nauseum with, well, who's responsible for this cost? Who's responsible for that cost? So conceptually, but that doesn't lock us into a 50-50 arrangement. In the category there of the city and the county jointly approve the operator of the facility, I really just want to say that city and the county ought to collaboratively, I'd word that, the city and the county ought to collaboratively develop the arrangement for how the operator of the facility is going to be managed. But that's the basic concept of these various principles that I have here. I don't want to belabor this conversation any longer. I think the board letter is pretty clear. I know we have a number of speakers, and I also know that it's the first time. I alerted the board members I was going to bring this last week, but I know it's the first time the board members, and it's a big topic, so I want to make sure that you have plenty of time to weigh in, and I look forward to a collaborative conversation with my colleagues about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 7 speakers. Anybody want to ask me questions on this before there's speakers? Are you good?
I think we should listen.
Okay, great.
I do have a couple of questions,
Okay.
and I can save my comments till afterwards. You lay out how the county will coordinate the cooperation, and in doing so, you talk about a phase 2, a phase 1, and I'm not clear on the phasing and what comes before the Board of Supervisors for votes.
The first agreement would come to the Board of Supervisors for a vote to make sure that these conceptual things, when they start to have an arrangement that's set out. Let's say that staff negotiates a 90% county share and a 10% board share. Well, before the staff spends a whole lot more time on the actual specifics, because there are a lot of specifics. So before the board spends a lot of time on that, that's part of that first agreement, sort of the broad arrangement that we're going to have with that city. The second phase is then, okay, now the board may say, we're not comfortable going 90, we're comfortable going some other percentage, right? Let's say it ends up back at match. We're going to match what the city puts in. Then, once you have that agreement, now it makes sense for staff to sit down and work out the specifics. Much more, I'll give you an example. All of these kind of things need to be understood. There needs to be an agreement, so you're not battling over these things afterwards. Is it a drop-in center? Can anybody present? Can the police pull up and drop anybody off? Should that be a service that they're referred to this? They need to get clearance by the nonprofit organization or clearance by the social worker. That's a level of detail that would be in the second agreement. Both agreements would come, and both agreements would be in writing. And part of why I think this is the appropriate way for us to go is I have sat there over and over again in these conversations with cities in our part of the district where staff is having these conversations, and I get this verbal, well, it looks like they're going to do this and we're going to do that, and then 2 weeks later it looks like they're going to do this and now we're going to do that, and then it kind of goes radio silent for a while, and we need to just get it clean. We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. Put it in writing so we don't have those misunderstandings. So that's what I'm trying to do. I hope that helped answer your question.
And I do appreciate it, and you have a lot of experience working with warming shelters, homeless shelters in the West County than what I'm seeing in the East County. And I'm also looking at, and I appreciate the fact of wanting to have more clarity so everyone knows their roles. So I thank you for wanting to put that forward. When you're talking even the subject heading, because what I'm looking at, I don't know if it even applies to what you're looking at in the West County. But when we're looking at things like housing for victims of abuse, disabled, transitional housing, supportive housing. We've done some great collaboration to bringing these different parties together. So it's not just one section of society that the housing would be providing for. And that's what I've been seeing more in the East County, is that we have a more broader housing type that government assists with, but it does essentially keep people from being on the street. So I look at this as, if it were to apply for the types of projects that I'd like to see occur in the East County, I'd want to make sure that it is broader than just what you're talking about. But I don't know if you are interested in the broader approach.
Well, sure, I'm interested in the broader approach. When you say broader approach, the one coordinating issue here is this is homeless.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's, I mean, we see it in our office all the time. I mean, the homeless spectrum is enormous, from the chronic homeless person that's down in the river bottom that is service resistant, to the family that it's 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon and they just have been moved out of whatever living arrangement they're having. She's trying to say, do I sleep in the car with my kids this weekend, or can you do something for me? If they have the category of homeless on there, then yes, I want us to try to work with the cities to come up with good ways to do that. So yes,
I'm just saying
certainly be.
that kind of the end product incorporates not only just homeless on the street, but also keeping people from becoming homeless, people who are have to have shelter because of their potentially a situation at home where they're victims of abuse. So it's not necessarily, I'm just wondering, if you have something just specific in your mind, and that's what this applies to, that isn't necessarily what's going on with other areas of the county.
I clearly recognize, as I said, there's all kinds of things that we need to do in the 10-year plan to end homelessness that we identified. For example, the Homeless Prevention Fund. How do you prevent people from being homeless? What do you do with, we've tried to be pretty active with the district attorney. What do you do with victims of abuse, and where do they go? This policy doesn't in any way hinder or stop any of the collaboration that's going on with those things. This is just trying to identify the one thing, if you looked at Ventura County history, the one thing we haven't been able to do is actually do a shelter. So this is an attempt to try to say, on that particular aspect of this broad thing that we're all committed to, this is a way to try to move the ball up the court and see if it doesn't result in the actual development of some shelters in some cities if they're willing to collaborate on this.
And so the end product, the facility that you have, could have a portion of other elements in society that are facing it, as well as some folks that are actually homeless at this moment.
Sure.
And then this would apply to that. Your protocols would apply to such a facility if it incorporates an element of just the people right on the street.
I appreciate the question, and I realize there's a lot here. So when you say this would apply, it wouldn't apply to the shelter. It only applies to how do we work with the cities to negotiate what the shelter is. But so from that standpoint, it doesn't lock anything or preclude anything. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you and the city of Thousand Oaks have an interest in half of this facility being for homeless people that just episodically just became homeless this week, and you want half of the shelter to be for battered women, right? It seems like that's a big conceptual thing that ought to be in the first wave of the agreement. Hey, City of Thousand Oaks only wants to go this way if this is going to have battered women and episodic homeless. Maybe in the city of Ventura, it's got a completely different, that seems like that should be in the first level of agreement, okay? Maybe the county wants to participate more with the battered women or less with the battered women or more with the homeless. You work the big thing out. Then you come back and you say, okay, if we have conceptual agreement between the city of Thousand Oaks and the county on it's a 50-50 battered women and such shelter, now all the details that have to get worked out, so, and there are a ton of them, that would be the second agreement that would come back. That's how I would see it.
And generally, we have been very successful without having the details come to a board vote, but I understand when you have more things that are potentially more sketchy, you're not talking about building a long-term thing that's going to be there for 20, 30, 40 years, you know. But when you're trying to do things on the fly, which unfortunately is what's been happening a lot in the West County, that you want to see that you have some protocol in place. And we are the county. What we do generally is we're providing supportive services, we're providing funding, but not necessarily the location. So this is, the cities are going to be, and you're saying taking the lead on the locations and all that, and that is completely appropriate. I feel that when we work with the city, we need to be, as you mentioned, and I appreciate it, collaborative as possible. We have, for example, the Continuum of Care Committee that includes some city managers, right, of cities that are interested in seeing more effort in place to affect these populations. So the idea that in the vein of being collaborative, I like the idea of actually having this, what proposed protocols, get some vetting from our staff, from our continuum of care, from our cities. I really, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with any of this, but this is a step of saying we want collaboration, that it should be a collaborative step. I really like that idea. For example, it reads talking about how we are putting together, approving, using the following core principles as a tool to coordinate cooperation. I'd like the word to be encourage cooperation. You know, just as we can work with our cities so that they feel that they are a partner, I would like to also have the city managers, the city councils, if they want to bring it, also have some input on this too, because you're establishing roles. The city will have this role, the county will have that role. But I do like the fact that it's brought forward. I do understand the need to bring it forward. I just like, you know, as our first step, to have that collaboration by vetting it. But I appreciate the fact that you brought it forward.
Okay, since Supervisor Bennett's been here, we're getting behind on schedule. So we're right on time. Supervisor, real quick, yes, we got speakers.
The way I see this agenda item is that we need to work with the cities. I think it's important that we work with the cities to get the year-round shelter, and as mentioned here in the report, during the fall weather, one of the things that we work on year after year is that we end up with the warming shelter. Either Ventura has it or Oxnard has it, and we need to find that shelter, year-round shelter for individuals, whether it's adults, children, people living in cars, and so forth. I think this is the idea that I get. It's a conceptual idea. It's an idea that we can work with the cities, an idea that there will be a lot of specifics that we can work on eventually. But I think it's something that we need to work with the cities and again, to get away from this Ventura deal in West County, that Ventura has it this year and Oxnard has it this year, and we don't have enough funding and so forth. But we work with the nonprofits and other individuals. I think we can. It's an idea. It's a conceptual idea, and I think it's something that we need to work on. And I'm sure that we can have the cities working with us, which is extremely important for all of us to help our homeless individuals. That's the way I see it now, and I might be wrong.
Well, I was going to wait for my comments till after I listened to people, but I did have a couple questions on this. First, I want to thank you very much, Supervisor Bennett, for bringing this forward. I know that's been a large frustration for all of us to what are we doing with the warming shelter, who's going to be running it, where the location is. Here we are, we had to extend our warming shelter. And I understand our staff's frustration with that, as well as our community leaders. Kay Wilson is here. I mean, there's a lot of people in our cities that are dealing with these issues. And there's a continuum of care group that is working on that. There's the League of Cities that are working on this same thing. CSAC, which is the California State Association of Counties, is also working on that. SCAG. There's a lot of things that I think we want to make sure we're not missing, because as we go on the national and federal level, it is all looking at evidence-based outcomes. And I don't see that in here. And I'm wondering, based on funding and programs or continuum of care, if we need to include that in here, because we really are driving outcomes. We don't want to be housing, at least my conceptual idea of it, we don't want to continually be housing people that can't get to that next stop. We want them to being able to get housing so they could start working, and then from there get maybe transitional housing, and then be able to really get a good salary and move on. I think on all levels of the associations and our county base, we need to be looking at what is our plan. And I would love to work with you, Supervisor Bennett, on a 10-year plan. I think, doesn't it need to be updated soon? For our homeless. I would love to hear what is our actual evidence as to what the homeless population is currently in this county. I was a little disappointed that it gets moved off our calendar, because I'm trying to figure out what the horse before the cart before the horse. We need to know what our data is, what we're working with, and how we can work together. So with this recommendation, I would personally agree to fleshing it out and making sure that the staff comes back and gives us that data that we need. All of the programs that we're getting funding for is all evidence-based, especially with our medical and so forth. So I would propose that we definitely focus on this. I think we as a board agreed that our staff was supposed to come back and we were having a study session. And I really would like to understand where that is. And I think based on this letter that you've provided, we really need that soon.
And I'm sure that the cities are going to work with us. And we have a lot of city representatives here.
And I would love for the cities to be here today to have this conversation, because I would love to be able to tell them, so do you agree on this program?
Yeah.
Do you have the budget to do this? Because just because I say we're going to have a budget, it doesn't mean that they're going to join in.
And the recommendation sure is funding. Where do we get the monies from? What's a percentage the county should put up? What the city should put up? How can we get the nonprofits to help us out? All those specifics, I'm sure that Supervisor Bennett is looking for. Right now, it's more of a conceptual idea.
Yeah, I think the idea is, what Supervisor Bennett was here was really just trying to make a formal way to get this conversation going. That's
I think
that's all it is. Let's don't get it so broad that we can't get anything done. Let's just get the conversation
moving. We don't have
moving
specifics here yet.
And get some things going, and then each city can do their own kind of thing.
Exactly.
And we can see. But I think we just got to get it going. I think.
And we can partner with the cities.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is I don't want people to think that we're bringing this letter here, that we're pushing down. And I don't want to think that we're not listening to staff when we're supposed to say we are listening to staff. And I don't want it to think that we're pushing this in your cities, you got to now deal with us. I want us to be collaborative working. So I get very sensitive when wording comes out that someone could take it in a way that we're not working together.
No, we are.
I
Just
think
saying
you
it
do
out
make
loud.
a great point, and we all do want to make sure we can be as collaborative as possible. But you make a great point, too, about we have been really trying to get to permanent housing.
That's right.
And keep saying, okay, this is the last time we're going to do an emergency shelter because we need to work towards permanent housing. It's a bit unrealistic because you still have people on the street. But, we also have to make sure that is our goal. And that's why I like the concept that, working with more than just one population, because we do have to continue, that continuum of care. We have to make sure that we can get them off of the streets permanently, and that has to be the goal.
And we have a lot of families and children living in cars, and non-permanent shelter to that, I think is important. So I
And
think.
have a permanent place where you can go to the same school and all of
Exactly
that.
right.
So that definitely has to be the goal. But particularly with relationships between the county and various cities, we just want to make sure they understand that we want to help see that even in their cities that we can.
But I
reduce
think this
the
is good conceptual idea that we can start off with. And I'm sure, Mr. Chair, that we have a lot of speakers.
So if I could, before the speakers come, I just would like, because I'd like to hear from the speakers about this, and I appreciate, the issue that, what we're really trying to do is get permanent housing for everybody. I would just offer to you, if you read everything out there, we can't get permanent housing for the people in Ventura County that aren't homeless. We have we have an enormous housing crisis here already. So to think that we're going to solve this problem by only focusing on permanent housing, everybody, all the professionals I talk to say we've got to have some place where we can have people located so that we can work with them to try to get there. So mostly I'm just asking the speakers to, if as you make your comments, if you could quickly weigh in on, do you feel like this is right for us to move forward? Because I think I share Supervisor Foy's opinion. I'd be willing to change one word in there, and that is approve using the following core principles as a tool to coordinate our cooperation with the cities. What we're really trying to do is direct our staff under what kind of parameters do you talk. If we have it just completely a blank slate, our staff comes and we say, you just wasted 3 months of your time having these conversations because there's no way we're interested in doing something without the city putting up X amount of money or whatever. So this is an attempt to try to just get us down to a playing field. So we're not dictating to the cities. We're not pushing anything down. I don't see anything in here that pushes down. It just says these are the parameters we'd like our staff to have the conversation with the city on. But I'm a little bit, I would be a little bit perplexed to think that what we want to do is ask the cities, how do we ask the cities if we want to coordinate? Because then we should have a conversation. How do we ask you to ask you to coordinate? I mean, it's a chicken and egg thing. At some point in time, we got to get going. Final thing I would say is, we keep running out of time on this thing. We will be back faced with what are we going to do next winter sooner than you think. And I don't believe we're going to get a shelter built, but we may, with the collaboration, come up with foul weather shelter, that whole issue. But I'm determined to not have us get to where we got last year, where last year in February and March, we said we're not going to get to the end, and we did. And that's because we didn't exercise leadership from our standpoint. So yes, we listen to staff, but we also create policy for staff. And this is the policy for narrowing the playing field so staff's work is actually most productive for us. Thank you very much.
And staff could work with the city managers too of the cities.
Okay, let's try to get this.
Supervisor Foy, I'm sorry, but this is probably one of the most important things that we can do at the Board of Supervisors is to work on one of the most pressing issues in our nation. I understand we have time-certain items, but we have also had policies in the past that this is kind of butting up against. I remember with the other Supervisor Long, quite clearly it was a statement of yourself, Supervisor Long, the board, that we're going to get off of the roller coaster of keep doing these warming shelters and going to something more permanent. And so we all acknowledge the fact that we need to deal with people constantly that are on the street. So this is a shift in that, from what I'm hearing you say?
I don't see that at all.
Okay, because that's what the feds have been telling us too, is that the money that we have should be put towards permanent type housing and away from the constant sheltering emergency. I'm not saying what one is good or bad. I'm just saying that is a policy that we have been working with.
I just want to clarify.
Okay.
I think that's not nuanced enough to
Okay.
suggest what the policy is. The policy calls for a transitional crisis housing so that you can get them services, so that you can get them the permanent side of it.
Well, just the word
The steps that-
transitional, I think, is a positive, and I would love to see that incorporated in here too. And I think that would be a benefit, because I am, again, going back to what the final outcome is. It also puts out something very strong, which I support, which is we're looking at putting up half the funds. That has never been stated before either, right?
Well, we did allocate $2 million to match city funding for the capital cost. So, and no city took us up on that. So that's why this is an attempt to try to jumpstart that again by saying, now we're saying we'll match the city on capital cost and we'll match the city on operation and maintenance if we can work the details out.
And then there's also this issue
It's
of,
an expansion.
you may have a first come, first serve issue because you may have several cities stepping up, so that will be something that we will have to address.
What a pleasant problem to have if we have.
If we have a $25 million project that we're working on in one place, that's going to take up $12.5 million. I mean,
Well,
so we want to make sure that we also have some priorities in place, and it may well be that we want to link it to where are the most homeless? You know, and that might be something that we will be in considering too.
All of those details are details that have to be worked out, but, yeah.
Let's get going. I know that Lori and Rosa wanted to make everybody have 1 minute, but I'm going to say 3 minutes, okay?
And just one other question I did too.
To speed everything up.
You want just a nonprofit to run them, something like, we have some that are not nonprofits?
There's a lot of nonprofits that are willing to work with us.
All of that is just conceptual.
Well, it does state it specifically that it will be a nonprofit.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, you know, you're putting out, here's our protocol, so if you have something that isn't within that protocol, you know, that I would say that you want to loosen that protocol then.
Well, then you could just say, go negotiate. I mean, it's the protocol, it's the starting spot. It's not it doesn't lock us in, it's the protocol. It just says that's where our staff is going to start. A city might say, hey, we want the city to operate it. Okay, fine, let's have the conversation. I know some cities.
So that's something that, it doesn't have to be a nonprofit has to run it, which is what you state on item number D.
Well, it also says we're going to match the cities, but it doesn't lock us into matching the cities. We might end up, because of the way the cost of the funding is, it might be a 60-40 thing.
So maybe in here we're going to talk about, put in the word conceptual. So conceptually, a nonprofit operates the facility.
I got conceptual all over the place. Approve the concept of working with the city in number 1. 2B, conceptually, the county intends to. I've got conceptual, in there specifically for that. I'm sorry, but yeah, so we're trying to do that. Right.
So it isn't, you're not stuck with a nonprofit if there is other models.
Conceptually, I'm not stuck with anything because I'm just trying to do concept, right?
Okay.
We're good? We got 7. Well, we can talk after. All right. So, Mark Alvarado. Mark here. And then Judy Alexandre on deck, please. 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, supervisors, Mr. Powers and staff. My name is Mark Alvarado. I'm with the City of Oxnard Housing Department. I'm the Homeless Assistance Coordinator. I'm here on behalf of Arturo Casillas, who couldn't be here this morning. We're excited about this opportunity. We're ready. We're ready to get on board. We endorse the language conceptually, and we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work on a sustainable year-round shelter. Specifically, we have been working internally to identify property to jumpstart this. We want it to be comprehensive, holistic. We want to have a comprehensive entry and exit program. We know that the housing stock is a challenge, but we feel that we need to get that to the first base first. Let's get the building, let's get the operation, and we're going to try to employ workforce skills, educational opportunities, social services, comprehensive, do all the wraparound services there at the facility so that we give people the best chance to get back on their feet. Nobody deserves to be on the streets. So this is an act of compassion that you guys have brought forward. It's the right thing to do. We're not going to get consensus on everything that we're going to do here, but we know it's the right thing to do. So with that, just thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to leave my card since I'm new. Basically, personally speaking, this is 5 months to the day that I started. I came here and I heard you guys loud and clear on the opportunity to have a year-round shelter and the way things were going with the winter warming shelter, and it's been a bit of a baptism by fire for me. But believe me, this is good work, and we're going to make it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Thank you for working with us, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And then Judy, and then Clyde's after that, Reynolds.
Thank you, supervisors. I'm ecstatic that you're talking about this. I am, a proud member of NASW, the National Association of Social Workers, and very proud of my profession, so thank you for recognizing them. And I'm chair of the Ventura Social Service Task Force, which is a collaboration of public and private and individuals working together to do what we can to end homelessness. And this is what we want. We want to be able to work with the county, to work together to establish a year-round, full service shelter transition to housing, which means you have to have the shelter and then you have to have the very affordable and extremely affordable housing, which will, Supervisor Parks, also prevent people from becoming homeless if they have a place to live that they can afford to live in. So thank you. We are behind you. And if anything that I can do or VSSTF can do, we want to work with you, and we want the collaboration between the counties and the cities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate that. Clyde, and then Kay Wilson-Bolton after that.
Good morning, Board Chair, Supervisor Foy, members of the Board of Supervisors, Mike Powers. I'm Clyde Reynolds, a former homeless housing and services provider and currently the co-chair of the COC Housing and Services Committee. First, I'd like to thank Supervisor Bennett for his recommendation for establishing these protocols and procedures for working with the cities to create the desperate need we have for homeless shelter on a year-round basis here in our communities. This recommendation complements the current report of the COC's Housing and Services Committee that states we do have a homeless shelter and immediate housing crisis. This report included recommendations that local jurisdictions acknowledge this homeless shelter and immediate housing crisis, that they address homelessness through regional cooperation, and that the cities and jurisdictions develop and implement year-round emergency shelter solutions with supportive services tailored to their communities. We've been talking about, the fact that we have a crisis and maybe what's some of the evidence of that. Well, for some of us, it's been over 20 years that we have been working on trying to establish a year-round shelter in the city of Ventura and in other cities with no success. The 2007 County Ventura 10-year plan to end homelessness, as Supervisor mentioned, concerning the shelter's recommendation was to create 150 additional shelter beds. So far, we've only created 7. Also, I think, as was mentioned, we all agree that we need to replace the warming shelter at the National Guard Armory. But once again this year, at the last moment, we had to use the Armory because we had no facility or no provider who would operate a winter shelter without the possibility of operating a year-round shelter. So not only do we not have permanent housing options for most of the homeless persons we're serving, we do not have enough temporary housing for those persons while we attempt to find them the permanent housing they need. We believe a crisis exists when we have an estimated, we believe, at least 2,500 people year-round who we cannot shelter. In conclusion, we agree with Supervisor Bennett that it is time to redouble our effort to work together, pool our resources, leverage our individual strengths in order to provide year-round shelter for the unsheltered persons in our communities. We must start now if we're to have a year-round shelter this coming winter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And then Rick Schroeder after that, and then Jeffrey Lambert.
Good morning. Chairman Foy, esteemed supervisors, Mr. Powers. This is about leadership. Thank you for being so thoughtful about crafting it. I had no idea you would spend this much time on that, but it tells me that you are willing to take the leadership that the cities need to get this done. There are cities out there who will say, right now, we cannot afford this, but I know that what my own city cannot afford is the continuous calls for first responders, for the emergency rooms being used as the primary care, for people on the streets making a mess and making the business community mad. We have got to put them into a managed place. Hopefully it's temporary until they go to permanent housing. But none of this is going to happen until somebody takes the leadership to collaborate, encourage, whatever that delicate word is we need to bring everybody into a fold for a common dialogue. I have my own homeless people in Santa Paula. The myth is that your homeless people are coming to my community. They're not. You have your own homeless people. So help us take care of ours. We'll help you take care of yours so that we're managing this properly. And for housing, the word managed has to be associated with it. The conception of the public is that we're going to provide an apartment with a key and a shower and a refrigerator and all of that and a microwave. That's not what we have in mind. We need to keep them into a safe, get them into a safe place so that I can connect them with all the resources that we heard about this morning so that we get them on a path to that great whole person care that is possible. And I know in their hearts they want. We just need to lead them to it so that they can take advantage of it. And I want you to know what a small community Cannon is willing to do. Santa Paula, this morning, thanks to the leadership of former mayor and council member Jenny Crosswhite and city manager Michael Rock, we're opening an emergency shelter for 2 nights to cover our people during the rain. And I picked up the phone and called 2 of my best clients and said, hey, I need about $2,000 to cover the cost, and they sent through PayPal. So sometimes it's just the ask, but believe me, it's all about leadership, people, because we're there, okay?
Thank you very much.
And I just also want to thank you so much for what you do in Santa Paula is amazing. You see what one person can do, and also appreciate your comments that we need to take care of the people in our own cities, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Foy, members of the Board of Supervisors, county staff. I am Rick Schrader. I'm president of Many Mansions. And Many Mansions is actually the leading nonprofit provider of permanent supportive housing in the county of Ventura. And we definitely need more permanent supportive housing, and the county must play a big role in that. But we are also generally supportive of this proposal. Having a year-round crisis housing shelter throughout the county is essential for getting our homeless population off the street and into permanent housing. You know, too often we have very few vacancies in our permanent housing, so we need that type of immediate housing. But too often when we do have a vacancy, it's hard to locate the people because they have no fixed location. We often find that they have not worked with the county staff or social service agencies to get ready for our housing. So having a year-round shelter throughout the county will actually aid in our ability to provide more permanent supportive housing. But it needs to be a county-wide effort, and I think we need the support and coordination and collaboration, not just of the county and the cities, social service agencies, and nonprofits. So I think this proposal is a step in the right direction. A lot of details need to be kind of worked out. Every community is different. There needs to be lots of flexibility, but definitely it needs to be a collaborative effort, and Many Mansions is supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Samuel Thompson and Jeffrey Lambert.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Samuel Thompson. I'm a resident of Ventura County since 2009. I'm proud to be living here, and I appreciate this audience at this time. I wanted to take a moment and I commend Mr. Bennett for what he's trying to do here. I wanted to introduce Eco Homes USA. We're a manufacturer domestically and internationally of modular steel structures. These structures can serve as shelters. The same structures are actually being used as 5-star hotel components around the world. No difference to the basic structure. These structures offer a few distinct advantages compared to any other model that you might do. And one might I address that was brought up, what could we do? We could have a full model area up and running in 150 days. Not a year, not 2 years, not 3 years. These models cost 25% of traditional housing and probably 50% to what I've seen done in other cities in terms of this. Exciting news on this. We have a model here right in Oxnard that is fully expandable to give anyone a complete idea of what we can do, how we can do it, and how we're different. I reach out to the supervisors here and any of the people with the cities that are here to join us in working toward this effort. Again, they're modular steel structures. Fire, earthquakes, nothing compares to them. We see these tall buildings built in San Francisco made out of massive concrete. What are they doing? They're sinking, forget the earthquake aspect, they're sinking into the mud. So, again, our name is Eco Homes USA. We're in Oxnard. My managing partner is a Camarillo resident. I'm an Oxnard resident. We know there's a group of fine cities here. I commend your efforts toward these matching funds. And I think what we can do for X dollars can exponentially save quadruple what you might come up with any other solution. In closing, what we can do here, all these funds are spent on an annual basis. You go into next year, you've built no equity. Let's build some equity with some smart solutions now and for the future. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, where are they located in Oxnard?
Our model is at Montgomery Self-Storage at the intersection of Vineyard and Montgomery.
Oh, okay.
It's right there. That model is actually fully transportable and self-contained. It could be one of a 200-unit apartment building. It could be one of a small complex.
It's in El Rio then?
Exactly. Exactly.
Is it the convex boxes?
I'm sorry?
Convex boxes?
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Is it the convex boxes?
No, these are
The shipping
well,
containers
it's-
that we redo
okay,
and it's
we
like
have
the
two
mini
models.
houses?
All of it is based off the shipping container model.
Yes, thank you.
And this is, but the difference is, as some people know, what we're doing, and just the big difference. Who knows what's going on in the past history of that shipping container? Could have gone from Libya to Iran. We build each and every one, unlike any other company in the United States, from scratch. It has never been used for shipping, which is
It's a
a
brand
key
new
component.
brand new
rel-
container.
Okay. All built from scratch.
Thank you.
Great.
I
Thank
just
you
seen
very
them,
much.
they look
Right,
great,
and
so thank
it's
you.
also, the same one can be built as what's called an ISO modular steel structure, which is the same structure without the cargo doors on the back.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Jeffrey, and then Kathleen Heron.
Hi, good morning, board members. Jeff Lambert, City of Ventura. One thing I wanted to say is thank you. I wanted to recognize this effort by the board. I can tell you for sure that the city is supportive of this effort and wants to collaborate with the county to develop these strategies. And so my message to you is we're here with you. I appreciate that. A couple things I want to add. We just this week sent a letter to Christy Madden from our mayor, Neil Andrews, asking the county to help us with our site selection through the process of finding a shelter. So we are very much collaborating with the county and taking advantage of how we can work together. You have in-house real estate people. We don't. We want to invite the county to help us find a location in the city of Ventura, and we're happy to work with you on that. I also want to say that the city has also already set aside $300,000 of our Measure O money, our new sales tax measure money, just for the shelter as a first step in year one. We're not going to spend it in year one, but we've begun to set that money aside, and I can tell from some people in the audience that we will continue to be pushed to do more than that $300,000 over the next couple of years. So we are committed to putting our money on the table to deliver that outcome and that success. And then third, this is maybe symbolic, but I think important, our City Council Homeless Committee, which has been active for years, just last year changed their name in light of what it's going to take to solve this problem. They're now called the Homeless and Affordable Housing Committee, recognizing that we can't solve homelessness without housing. And so really trying to focus on both of those aspects in the whole continuum of care. And I also want to recognize your CEO and other city managers that have been working closely to try to have an MOU across all the cities where we all agree to take care of our own. And I think this step on the County Board of Supervisors' part is really part of that success story, and I thank you for that.
And Mr. Lambert, that's going to help us with the warming shelters year after year. We have Oxnard, Ventura, you know,
I will tell you, since you brought it up, that I have done nothing on that shelter this year. The City of Oxnard staff did all the heavy lifting to make that happen in Ventura this year. So I appreciate them.
Carl Lawson, he's in the audience.
He did a few things to help out. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen, there you go.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Ahern. I am the board president of the Samaritan Center serving the homeless in Simi Valley. Betty Esky, our executive director, was not able to be here, so I am representing us. We provide services to the homeless each and every day. We do not have a shelter. We work with a program we call PADS. I always forget what it stands for, Permanent Action to Deliver Shelter. We work with the local churches during the winter months only to make sure there's a place for people to live. We provide wraparound services. We provide training. We provide job applications, connections to the local medical care, mental health services. We are the wraparound program that your program needs, and we want to make sure, we keep hearing the cities, and we love our city, and they are supportive, but we want to make sure that part of the plan is to work, and Mr. Zaragoza, you've mentioned it, work with the nonprofits who already have a built-in system to serve the population. The one thing we don't have is housing for those in most desperate need. We have veterans in the evenings right now. We have families, we have kids, we have single mothers, and we have a single adult men. We screen every night to make sure that people aren't coming out on drugs and alcohol. We have a program to make sure that this doesn't get out of control and cause a problem for you and for our communities. So we thank you so much. This is the most exciting thing that's come on our desk in a long time. And the fact that the compassion of some of you, all of you, is really remarkable, and I had no idea. I'm very, very impressed. So thank you. Don't forget the nonprofits, and make sure that we can be part of the process and part of the solution.
Thank you for what you do, and thank you for coming out today to speak. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's the last speaker I have. There's nobody else? All right, Steve?
Thank you very much. I wanted to just point a few very quick things out. One is there was reference to the continuum of care program that we have out there. And the continuum of care program, which is different than I think what we did before, is that this continuum of care program is our staff working with the staff of nonprofits and the staff of cities to try to coordinate our homeless actions that are out there. The continuum of care is not the policy making, and that's where we sometimes have had problems, is you don't want to get in front of the board in terms of policy making. The board sets policy, but I think this is just the kind of thing that really helps our staff work at the continuum of care. Now they've got a board policy. They can say, these are the protocols, these are the concepts we'd like to work with when you talk about shelters. There's all kinds of other things they're going to talk about, homeless prevention, everything else, but this helps them when they do that. One. Two, there will be lots of time for us to talk about what is the appropriate shelter and services for each particular city. I really appreciate Simi Valley has a remarkable bunch of people that, from foster care to homeless, it's sort of hidden off the radar screen down there, but just amazing. There's no question that there's no way the city of Simi Valley would move forward without you on board, and that's what this is saying. This is saying we're not going to move forward with something that's going to affect Simi Valley without having the Simi City on board, who's going to make sure that the Simi nonprofits are on board. So it's going to be tailored. The one thing that did come out years ago is that the federal government has said, we're done funding great big large warehouses where you're going to put 200 people and you're going to create and blight an area. We're done with that, and that's not going to fly in Ventura County. What everybody has said, but we haven't actually put into practice, is more modest shelters that fit the particular needs of that city. Now it's a lot easier for that city to locate, because they're building the kind of shelter that city says will work. And so that is what I think, but I'm not trying to lock in any of those details, but that's what I think is a city needs to come up with something modest, and it needs to be, the word crisis does have some implications to it. That's people who are in a crisis and who are willing to do something about their homelessness. It's not trying to take a chronic person and just jam services and jam it down and use up an enormous amount of resources for that. It's for people in that situation. That's my own view, but it depends on what any particular city comes up with. But I wanted to get that said. The final thing is, in this motion, I would like to add that we're directing staff that we would prefer, at this date, we would prefer to go to a foul weather shelter next winter than to reopen the winter homeless shelter. If we don't have something else, foul weather is so much more cost effective and makes so much more sense. Weather forecasts are pretty good. Everybody knew Tuesday to Thursday. I really loved hearing Kay Wilson talk about, they've come up with, it's going to be, it makes so much more sense. Get people in when it's raining, when you have really severe weather that you know about. But some days in January are as nice as the days in July, and we're doing all this transportation, taking buses back and forth, and it's not adding up. So conceptually, right, is work on foul weather with cities, with certainly Ventura and Oxnard, since they're the ones that come, and hopefully we don't find ourselves in the jam where we did last year, where we got nothing else, and it's just that.
Right.
Thank you. That's what I'd like to add and modify. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Can I ask something of you? Should we also be just having our staff come back with budget? We're in the midst of our budget season. If we're talking about policy and even fair weather, or going in with different cities to do this, when I talk with Supervisor Bartlett and Supervisor Doe down in Orange County, when we all 10 of us went down to see what their costs, just for the bus terminal that they did for a little bit of shelter was $3 million. So I think we do need to set expectations for our cities as to how much we can go into. Because maybe, is it 750? Is it only 50,000 we have? I think it would be prudent for us to understand what the budget we have to work with on that.
I think you're right. That was part of my thing too, is I think we're doing the right thing, but you can't put the cities out there and all of a sudden Oxnard says, oh, this is great, we're going. Oh, the county's going to put up, $10 million. We have to have some kind of caps or budgets where everybody knows what they are or something like that, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I tried to capture that when I said there is a recognition that there's a limit to this capacity, and the actual funding commitment will be made after discussions with the city. Okay. I just don't know whether we should start off by saying, this is what we have, and all of a sudden there may be lots of different ways that this can all work, et cetera. So I certainly don't mind having reports back in terms of our budget and capability. That would be all part of it. If our staff's really hustling, we'll get all of that information. But so this does recognize there's a limit.
Okay, because it wasn't clear.
Yeah. Okay.
And I want to make sure that staff is clear that they need to come back for it. So if we can at least make sure that that's on there. And the second thing is back to what you were talking about, the homeless plan. Can we also add on here that we will be reviewing that and updating it? I think we need to. And we were going to, but it's sliding. So if we can add that in, that we discuss it, I would really appreciate that.
It's different than this, though, isn't it?
Right, it is different. It has to come up.
There is a 5-year, at each 5-year increment, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think staff will nod their head, but I think it's at 5 years you adjust, and then 5 years you adjust again. So that is scheduled to come back. I just don't know where that is in the process.
Exactly, and so let's make sure it doesn't slide.
Staff can certainly fill us in on that. It's certainly appropriate for us to ask that.
Mr. Chair, I know that we're taking quite a bit. I just want to thank all the speakers. I want to thank Oxnard, I want to thank Ventura, Santa Paula. I want to thank Manny Mansions and all the individuals that are here today, to help us out. I think that this is an excellent program. It's a good start, a good conceptual start, and I think it's going to work. And thank you for being here today.
Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor.
As I look at this, it is designed for Oxnard and Ventura. I mean, that's pretty much what we've been dealing with in terms of both foul weather shelter. And I agree that we do need to recognize that it hasn't been as efficient and it hasn't been effective, and it does leave, just quickly trying to put something together at the end. So it'd be nice to have protocols, and if we're actually purchasing and building facility to accommodate that, that's going to be a lot more effective than just trying to get a few hours here and there at the, at the shelters that we have now. If it is to apply to the rest of the county, the East County and all that too, I think we do need to recognize it's not just what's listed here, but also transitional and supportive wraparound services. Those kind of things need to be in there. You want to focus on foul weather, you have year-round shelter in here too. But I would suggest we also discuss transitional and supportive wraparound. Otherwise, I don't know if it's going to be very applicable everywhere other than your districts. Also, it's so important that we work with all the cities. That's the only way we're going to get this through. I realized the outreach to come here today was to the service providers and Oxnard and Ventura. So this was not presented to the other cities and asked for their input and to come down. So I really would like to be able to, in the effort to be collaborative, to let the other cities have a look at this and bring it back. That's what I would like, if they have no comments, because right now what we're asking is, we're approving this document, and then the city councils need to approve it. But why not work with the city managers and get a document that they like too? It's item G, where the city councils have to approve what we're approving. So I just feel like, why not start this very moment with the desire to be collaborative by saying, let's send this off to the city managers, see if they have some suggestions on this. They may not have any, and then we can go forward with it. So that's what I'd like. Let's just be collaborative and ask the cities, other than the two that were invited.
Supervisor Bennett, isn't that the last sentence on this, to direct the county executive to work and communicate decision with them to the city managers?
I'm sorry, and I want to apologize. Everybody knows I came in late. My head is 3 times bigger than normal. So my body language may make it appear that I'm irritated or something. I'm not. It's an important issue. I really appreciate what you're saying. I don't get that. That side of it. You have to start somewhere. All we're asking for is, we're asking, communicate now to the city managers. We're just saying this is the protocol for how we want to talk about this. So it doesn't say the cities have to adopt this action. It says that the cities have to adopt in writing. The cities have to adopt the location. They have to adopt the plan, so that we don't have the same thing that has been happening, which is our staff tells us, well, the city said they were going to do this, and now they've changed their mind. They're not going to do this. We're saying in here, we're not going to make decisions unless we have something in writing from the city that says they're doing it. In other words, to avoid confusion, we're putting it in writing. They don't have to adopt these protocols. That's not what this is. But when these protocols lead to an agreement, this calls for the city to adopt that agreement in writing so that we don't have confusion.
Okay. That's more clarity.
That's what that calls for.
And I also appreciate that you're not wanting to coordinate the cooperation, but rather just our cooperation. That's what this is about. It's not coordinating. So you were wanting to insert the word our.
Yeah.
And you're willing to also put in transitional in there too? Because you're not just talking about year-round shelters.
I'm not, because as soon as you call, I see Judy shaking her head, I'm not, because as soon as you call, there are so many different components. One city may want to do, transitional. Another city may want to do chronic. Another city may want to do, focus on veterans. And they may want to do it in a different way. This is just, if it's about homelessness and providing shelter for crisis housing for homeless, and that's everybody that's in the crisis of homelessness.
Okay,
So
well, that I think is the difference. This will be whether it's adopted or not.
Right. And is it staff clear on what we're talking about?
Sure.
This is clear? Okay.
And Mike said yes.
Okay. You know what? I'm just checking. There's a lot of discussions that are going on and a lot of concepts that are going on, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
I would like to make an amendment that it also include transitional and supportive housing too, because right now it's looking like it's just year-round crisis. I'd like to also make sure that we're throwing out half of the match when it's also transitional. So I'd go ahead and make that amendment.
You okay with that? No.
It confuses things.
Yeah. I don't want to go down that path either. I don't mind the transitional. I just want it open to people come back and say, we're going to do transitional here, we're going to do that. Let's don't dictate to them exactly what we want to do.
I'm not dictating. I'm offering another option
It's
available.
types of housing.
But it's just so it will be applied. I mean, I feel if you're not going to include that, it's not going to get the same application, but that's something.
Yeah, it's just types of housing, which all the associations have been talking about.
Okay, I don't know, whatever.
It's not going to hurt anything. It's all conceptual.
Well, all right, it's Supervisor Bennett's motion. So
Yeah.
what do you want to do, Steve?
I'm just not comfortable.
You did state it in your comments that you were okay with transitional, but now you want to keep it the way it is.
No, I didn't say, I said, I don't want to call out transitional because then that starts to elevate transitional. I am saying year-round because that's the whole point. We're trying to end this idea of we're going to have something like a winter warming shelter. But if you call out transitional, there's all kinds of other things that you could call out. And again, I see the providers out there shaking their head.
Well, that's why I'm glad the city's on board. I'd love to be able to hear from the cities on this, other than Ventura and Oxnard, who were asked.
So a city could say, you know what, the only thing we want is transitional. Then these guidelines would have our staff say, okay, this city only wants to talk about transitional. There's nothing in here that says we're not going to talk about transitional, so we'll talk about transitional with that city. So it doesn't stop a city if that's what they want. But
that match would be okay for transitional too, even though you don't want to put it in here.
Absolutely. If it's a transitional, if it's a transitional shelter, yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to be as broad as possible here. We're going to work with the cities. And we're telling them we're going to help them with ongoing cost as well as capital cost.
Okay, as long as you're happy with allowing for transitional housing to also get a match, but you don't want to put the wording in here, right?
Yeah. We okay?
Well, I would like the minutes to at least note that we are okay with transitional
I think this recording, you'd hear it in this recording. Okay, so
and the changing of the word that this is ours, not coordinating everybody is.
I think he's agreed to that.
I've made that as part of the motion.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So we know the motion, Lori, we're good. We'll have, you're good.
May I read it?
Please, so we understand what we're talking about.
So we're directing staff that we would prefer to go to foul weather shelter next winter with our cities, Ventura and Oxnard.
And any,
no,
every city.
All cities.
No. The word "our"
Yeah.
under the recommendations, we have recommendation 1 and recommendation
Okay.
2. The first line of recommendation 2 reads, approve using the following core principles as a tool to coordinate cooperation. And Supervisor Parks is concerned about that because we're not coordinating the city's cooperation. So I said to make that clear, I would say, approve using the following core principles as a tool to coordinate our cooperation with cities. So it's a direction to our staff. That's what our cooperation with cities on addressing this pressing need.
And I would like the minutes to note that it would include transitional.
Okay, so you're good now? You want to try that again?
Is there any objections with that?
Well, the minutes are the minutes.
Minutes are going to be the minutes,
yeah. This meeting.
It's captured.
The motion is different than
broader.
minutes.
You good, Lori?
Yeah.
You're good? Okay, so now we can have it's Steve's motion. We have a motion then?
We don't have
You want a motion on that?
Oh, I got to make it now.
Yeah. All right, we have a second by Supervisor Zaragoza, then let's vote. Okay. Thank you.
And in that, we're talking about budget, we're
Of course,
talking
all
about
that's there, we heard all that,
what the
yeah.
next plan is.
Yeah, because it's all going to have to come back to us, too.
It's all
so-
going to have to come back because this is conceptual.
Right, and I appreciate the people
Thank you,
sitting through it,
everybody.
and thank you very much for coming for your comments, and thank you for what we're doing. We have another opportunity here, but I know that Jim wants us to just keep going, so he wants to put that behind it. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Jim. Who's going to do this?
Not so collaborative.
All right. So you got to have you come by yourself? You're going to have somebody come down and sit up here with you? Have your wife come down with you? Come on. So you get to listen to all the fun you get to listen to, so that's good. All right.
Hi there.
You're up. Thank you. Supervisor Bennett's going to inform me. Go.
Jim, I'm glad you're here. I'm really sorry that I couldn't be there Friday. I heard it was a great time. I would love to have seen you with that hat on the whole time. But sometimes you take double pleasure in doing these resolutions, but each time it's always a pleasure to sort of capture the career of somebody, and I have a partial capture of your remarkable career here, but certainly not all of it. So I'm going to look forward to reading that. But I want to say before I do that, over and over again, so many times I've looked to you in closed session for that little nod, that little, yeah, that's the way we should go kind of thing. And I think it's just been, from my perspective, the experience and the judgment that you've brought has been really helpful for us over and over again. I want to say thank you very much on behalf of all the citizens who are better served because of your service. But this is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors honoring Jim Dembowski for 34 years of dedicated service to the County of Ventura. Whereas Jim Dembowski began his career with the County of Ventura in April of 1984 as a senior personal analyst, coming over from Kaiser Steel as a dual degree graduate of Pomona College and several years of experience as a union representative for the United Steel Workers of America, Local 289. And whereas he's held 8 different managerial positions with the county in support of both the County Executive Office and the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. Whereas during the course of his employment, Jim has been a part of 42 bargaining tables, successfully acting as chief negotiator in 26 of those, each time reaching a tentative agreement that was balanced and fair. Jim has represented the county in some of the most challenging arbitration and employment matters in the history of the county, while doing so in a deft manner, never ending up in the Government Employees Relations Report. Right? And whereas he became the Deputy Executive Officer of Human Resources in March of 2015 and was promoted to Senior Deputy Executive Officer less than 6 months later, in those positions, serving as county's Assistant Director of Human Resources. And Jim has served as a resource to staff in all facets of human resources, as well as serving as a walking library of county history. And those two things are what I especially want to thank you for. Jim's well-deserved retirement will allow him to travel, split his time between here and Hawaii, sail, attend Jimmy Buffett concerts, right? And possibly stand before your board every Tuesday during public comments. And whereas Jim's retirement will also allow him to, most importantly, spend more quality time with Ellen, his wife of 25 years, as well as his 3 grown children, Caitlin, Ben, and Kelly, and his granddaughter, Sophia, all the while watching them grow into the citizens he and his wife always hoped they would become. And on that more emotional note, let's now therefore be it resolved that the Ventura County Board of Supervisors recognizes and thanks Jim Dembowski for his decades of service to the County of Ventura. And supervisors, before I ask Jim, I'll turn it over to you guys.
You guys have any comments you want to make?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank Jim, for an outstanding career, and like Supervisor Bennett, in closed session, many times we'd look to you and you say yes or no, and we kind of question it, but I just want to thank you and Alan and your family for an outstanding work. One of the things that I wanted to find out, what was that, what did Sean find in your record?
Pardon me?
What did you find in your record? We're talking about the superstar, this guy, he's done all this good work, but what was it that he found?
A few years ago, I earned myself a written reprimand that I always refused to take out.
Listen to that, guys.
I refused to take it out.
Good man.
Asked it to be taken out.
But I want to thank you, and Ellen, thank you so much, and I got to meet her the other day, and the young ladies, thank you for your 34 years of service to the County of Ventura. And I know you're going to have a lot of fun, going to Hawaii and sailing and so forth. Thank you again, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks.
I just also just want to thank you. You are just really so much a part of the team. You will be very much missed, and I know you've gone through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. We've gone through so many tough negotiations and such, and you've been right in there, whether it's litigation or unions. And so I know you deserve a break, but I just think you're too young to leave, So congratulations on being able to do this.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Mine too.
Mr. Powers, I know that's important.
Thank you, Chair Foy, Jimmy. As you said, Supervisors, it was a great retirement event. It was festive and heartfelt. It was just really balanced. What was amazing, that hat you referred to was ridiculous. I mean, there was a pink flamingo on his head. And yet, after a while, I didn't notice it. It seemed natural. I couldn't imagine him without it, frankly. But that says a lot about you. I mean, Jimmy's a character and a half. There's no question about it. I love the image of him in his pink shirt representing the steel mill workers in Fontana, right? His great phrases, you lie, you die, the sleeves off your vest. And he is a legend. A lot of times legends are exaggerated, but I can tell you every story about Jim is real. But more than anything, two things that stick out to me and I think really came to light during the event was Jim is a consummate human resources and labor relations professional, second to none in terms of his skills and ability. I personally have relied on them, just like your board has, just immeasurably. His knowledge and experience, his integrity and courage to tell it like it is in every situation, always. Labor is about relationships, and Jim has understood that, and he's conducted every table that he's led with openness and honesty and fairness, and I think that's a big contributor to the long-lasting, solid labor relationships that we have with all 15 of our bargaining units. During the events, there were a lot of speakers, and there was a couple of themes that emerged that just to highlight. One, Jim's a mentor to so many, a partner, an advisor, and then a friend. And those comments came through loud and clear. And Jimmy loves to wear the bright clothes and so forth, but the only thing brighter is his face when he's talking about his family, his wife Ellen, and his 3 kids and his grandchild. And that's what Jim's about. And you have changed the culture here at Ventura County immeasurably for the better. We're so lucky. I feel so lucky to call you a colleague and a friend. And I know that our county family is just eternally grateful to you, and we just wish you and Ellen and your family wonderful retirements, happiness, and health, and sailing on the high seas. So, Jimmy, just thank you so much for 34 years of excellent service to our county and our community.
Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Powers. Yeah, Jim, it's always been one of those things. You can never miss how you dress. I mean, the best guy there is. No, is this because of you?
Despite her.
But he always looks great. But it just, whenever you needed an answer, as you talked about, it was always there. You understood, and so clear. There was nothing, just right to the point. And I think we're in good place because of what you've done. And I think Mr. Powers is clear about, people like that, like you, kind of like the leaven. It gets out and it gets into everything, and I think you've really made a major change. And so I just honored the professional who you are. You're a fun guy. That makes it also fun. I like to have fun. So that enjoys that. So we'll miss you. There's no question about that. I know your team will miss you, Sean, and the rest of the group, but the whole CEO's office that you spend time with. But enjoy yourself. Enjoy it. Have fun. This beautiful woman here and the rest of the family. So thank you very much. Now, you have an opportunity to tell your side of it.
Okay, thank you.
3 minutes now.
2 minutes now.
Whatever you want.
I won't be as long as some of my other ones. But I've got to say, walking across those red tiles, I remember the first time I came into this building, and I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. I could work here. And there's 34 years now. I get to say how cool I worked there for all this time. I'd like to thank the folks at GSA and the habits of the people working in the building for keeping the place still in great shape. I have to admit, it's probably in far better shape than I am. But I had more fun, and I have some good stories. A career, though, is not about a place. It's really about the work that you perform and the people you perform it with. It's almost cliche to say you're going to miss the people. And for me, that cliche is reality. I'm truly going to miss being part of this workforce, because over the years I've been able to ascertain exactly how lucky I was, not just as a coworker, but as a tax-paying citizen, to be part of a group of folks that well performs its duties and responsibilities for the body politic. A few years ago, a department head stopped me in the hallway, and he was railing about a couple of employees who had created a problem, and he was really quite upset. And I looked at him and I said, "How many employees do you have?" And he said, "Well, I have 132. And I said, "How many are problematic?" And he said, "Well, besides this issue, there's a total of 3. And he was really wound up. I just looked at him and I said, "Life's good." And he stopped, he grinned, and said, "Yeah, it is. I lost perspective there for a little." And I'm not pounding on him, because he was obviously on his game. He was a manager, he was caring, he wasn't just shrugging his shoulders and sending the problem down the road. He was trying to take care of business. But that conversation caused me to think about the old 80-20 rule you often hear. 80% of your problems, 20% of your people. That's actually embodied in federal law as an appropriate ratio for human resource endeavors. But I started asking groups of managers here in this county when I taught classes, think of all the people you've supervised or managed. And of those, how many were problematic? Never hit 80-20. Never, ever hit 80-20. Only twice was it below 90-10. It was usually 93 at 7, 92, 8. And that's reflective of the workforce. The vast majority, supermajority of county employees really care about what they do. And on a daily basis, they show up on time for work. They work hard, they work smart, they make the right decisions, and they do the right things so as to meet deadlines and to bring projects in under budget. Do we have issues and problems? Yeah. But generally, we properly address them. Do we have, can we improve? Yeah. But we've embraced the concept of Lean Six as an organization to continually provide for that. Do we sometimes see ourselves in the newspaper and go, uh-oh? At times, but think about this organization versus the other public entities that you see in the papers. We don't have those problems. We don't have them to the extent that they do. We're actually very, very quiet because we just take care of business. We're not perfect, as I said, but this workforce consistently provides a level of service that most public entities can just aspire to. And then something like the Thomas Fire occurs, and outsiders see what they view as an extraordinary response. And I'm not about to, I don't want to in any way give short shift to that response. But I was not truly surprised at it, at the depth and the quality and the timeliness of it. I truly would have been stunned if it had been anything else. Because that's the way we roll. It really is. Day by day, we take care of business. And when the crisis comes up, crisis by crisis, we take care of those. And it's been really cool for the last 34 years to not only have been part of that effort, but to be able to tell others in the community when they complain about something going on in some government someplace, say, but that's not the way we do it in Ventura. And HR, some special note to the folks in HR, we have a special role in the civil service, merit at-will system we have, the hybrid system we have in this county, and the system does work. We cast a wide net looking for talent. We test those we deem qualified. We recommend the hiring of the best. And we work with line managers once they've been aboard to continually train, develop, and improve them. The payoff is that 93-7 ratio workforce that when catastrophes do strike, they handle them with aplomb. And amongst all those high-quality employees, I've been able to, lucky enough to gain some very special friends. And I won't call each of them out, but I'd hate to miss even one. And I know I'm probably pushing my time. Oh, great, we don't have a card.
Take all you want, buddy, take all you want.
And I think most everybody knows who they are. Organizational quality does not occur by happenstance. Leadership sets the tone. Some of you may have heard the story about how Mike told me he needed me to have me continue speaking my piece right after a particularly contentious, but on the merits, meeting, when he sensed that I thought I might have overstepped bounds and I've started to pull back a bit. To his credit, and I'm sure at times to his discomfort, he told me to stay in the game. And that was appreciated. Like I said, a lot of people say I need to have opposing views. Very few people really walk that talk. And he allowed me to fully participate. And for the last 3 years, Sean, where is he? Sean's been my boss, and at times he's been a gracious and at times a most patient boss. And I could not have asked for working for any, I couldn't have asked for better working for these two folks. In particular, over the last few years, it's been a good way to end a career. I'd be remiss if I did not note the impact, and you know I'm not saying this just because you're here because I'm leaving. So I'm not trying to curry favor, but I'd be remiss if I did not note the impact, the manner in which your board consistently conducts itself. I've seen you not only in public, but in closed session. Face it, you're all type A personalities with deeply held convictions that often make you tick. Sometimes those convictions are the source of disagreements on the merits of various issues, but the collegial, professional merit of the issue manner in which you interact consistently and the attempt to find ways to reach consensus on how to best proceed for the good of the public is as good a model of citizen government that I've ever seen. Your merit-based engagements set the tone for the rest of the workforce. Speaking as an HR guy, I know that it goes out to the workplace. We don't have people talking about how, in some areas, this supervisor is pitted against this supervisor. We don't have the political faction or balkanization that occurs in a lot of organizations. That is missing in this organization, and it's in large part due to you folks. You set the business tone for the organization. As a taxpayer, I hope you keep it up. Finally, yes, I've recently been asked quite a few times, what was the best thing to happen in my 34 years here? And that one's easy. About 27 years ago, I met someone who I describe as the woman beyond my dreams. When the leader of the county's, the then leader of the county's largest union, brought his new deputy in to meet with Ed McLean, who was the head of labor relations, and myself as his number two. When they left, I turned to Ed and I said, hey, what do you think about Barry's new sidekick? And as I later discovered, Ellen went back to the union hall and asked, who's this Dembowski guy? And after a little over a year of debating and resolving issues, we really were focusing on the job. Labor and management finally did get together, and we're looking at our 25th wedding anniversary coming in October. Ellen's still making deals. She went into real estate over 15 years ago, and believe me, that was a break for county management because she was probably the toughest union rep I ever dealt with because she was good. I never saw any better. She's been my biggest fan, and when warranted, my most honest critic. And through her, I married into a family with two great kids, Kelly and Ben, and added another, Caitlin, who's probably watching right now instead of paying attention in which class is she in? Torts. At Hastings last school. Go back to school. Go back to your class. So special thanks to Ellen and the family for hanging in with me all these years. That's probably been the coolest thing of all. I've been able to raise my family here. So it's almost over. I'm playing here through Friday. And Sean is going out of town, so I'll be the adult in charge my last 3 days. So if anyone, any department heads out there need anything, I've learned how to say yes. But seriously, I've said several times, it's been really cool on a number of levels here. And please keep up the good work. Don't make me come back and have me yell at you on Tuesday mornings.
I love it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Supervisors and Mike, would you come down for a picture? And then we'd like to have everybody that's in the room come for a picture after we do this first picture. Thank you very much.
And Jim, thank you for those words. I wouldn't expect anything different. That was beautiful. I wouldn't expect anything different. That was beautiful. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Which one?
Yeah, right. I know you were worse than that. Jim.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll put you in the middle so we have the seal.
Why don't you slide in there?
Mike.
You got three on this one.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, Mike.
This is the middle.
Wherever you go.
All right.
the rest of your.
All right.
Yeah.
Bossy.
Come on.
Bossy.
Yes, congratulations.
She's working.
She's working.
Jim
says he's the armpit.
Oh, good, good.
I've been told I have to up my game.
I'm gonna rotate you. I'm gonna rotate you. Cruz, I want you back here.
Yeah, let you guys get in a little bit more.
Yeah,
no problem, Sean.
I'm a shorty. Balance yourself out. Here we go. Turn your shoulders to the inside.
Be cozy.
Come on down here, Mike. Get back.
Flamingo.
Let's go on the website. I better not see you back here again.
Thanks, man.
No worries.
That's it? Oh.
You know, retirees can participate.
Pardon me?
Retirees can participate now.
I gotta get my body fixed.
You can play dominoes. How about speech grab?
Speech grab.
We got a match for you, my friend.
Oh, is that the new shirt, Christy?
Are these nice?
Those are nice. I liked last year's, the red ones were nice too.
Your red ones are nice.
Yeah, they were a little small.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
That doesn't look like that pink hat or anything that Jim was wearing.
No pink hats, black and white. Okay, I know we're running behind schedule. My name's Christy Madden with the
Time's
County
up.
Executive Office and the County of Ventura Corporate Games Coordinator. I'm here just to help the board to kick off this year's participation in the corporate games. We're going into our 16th year, I think, participating in the corporate games. We have won the perpetual trophy the last 6 out of 7 years, so we're hoping to go for number 8 this year. There are about 31 different events that take place in the corporate games between March 24th and May 5th. We have about over 20 different coordinators from both large and small county agencies across the county. I know Jim talked about how county employees come to work and work hard. Well, they work hard in their off time too, demonstrating camaraderie and helping to bring the County of Ventura to our perpetual trophy fun. This Saturday, as Mike mentioned in his opening comments, is the opening ceremonies for the corporate games. That takes place at, I call it Kimball Park. I'm not exactly what the name is up there. But there are activities for friends and family. Encourage everybody to come out. There's usually climbing walls for the kids and lots of booths. There's cornhole tournaments. There's going to be all kinds of festivities. There'll be a lighting of the official torch to kick off the games. It really is going to be a good time, and I have it on very good authority that it's going to be dry.
And hopefully I'll be able to get here on Saturday and I won't get stuck on the wrong side of any potential freeway closures. So at any rate, I want to invite my few corporate games coordinators. Raise your hands, let everybody know that you're here doing your thing. Yeah, and our logo this year is in honor of all of our first responders for the Thomas Fire this year. So we are excited about corporate games and bringing home the trophy. Okay, questions, comments? Do come.
No, just thank you to Christy and all the team leaders. It's a huge 6 weeks, all these hundreds of events. It's just a lot of fun. It's great team building, and especially in the closing ceremonies when the county gets the trophy. That's also fun.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right. But it's good teamwork, and not just with the county, but with others, the cities and the other community-based organizations. So it's a great time. Thank you.
And I would like to just mention, too, in passing, we have a newly designed corporate games registration site. You can get there from VC Web. There's a logo that says corporate games, and it's totally redesigned, just like we've done with the county's webpage. Lots of photos and images from past events. It's very well done.
And if I could just say, Christy, with everybody sort of redlining since the Thomas Fire, the corporate games become even more important. They're absolutely essential to create that sense of bonding and mission that we have here. But thank you very much. Your leadership has just been outstanding.
Our participation in corporate games grew out of reduction in force was the first year that we were going through this, and it was absolutely instrumental in bringing the county family together.
So, Mr. Chair, Christy,
Yeah.
Christy, Mike was telling me he's going to win another gold medal. What was it in?
Ping pong?
What was it, Mike?
I'm lucky if I can get in the race. No. Definitely not.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have motion second.
Thank you.
Did you get everybody?
I'm coming. There we go.
All right, so we have our presentation. You're a busy guy today.
I am. What a day to be. Less than a peak performance.
Okay, you're up.
Thank you very much. This is proclaiming March 2018 as Red Cross Month in Ventura County, and more appropriate now than ever after the Thomas Fire and all the efforts the Red Cross has put forward to help our citizens. So we really appreciate it and appreciate you being here. And we've got Melissa Livingston, and my staff didn't write it well enough for me to read your name. How about introducing yourself for us, please? Yes. Yeah.
Narita Kasu.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I would never have gotten that out of this here. But I'd like to read this resolution and then personally thank you on behalf of all the residents in my district that have just been helped over and over again by various agencies, including the Red Cross. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll pass that on and back to everybody. But this is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Ventura County proclaiming March 2018 Red Cross Month in Ventura County. And whereas in Ventura County, we've been Red Cross strong for over 100 years, helping our neighbors in need through humanitarian efforts, mobilizing the power of volunteers, and the generosity of donors. Thus, our annual celebrations of American Red Cross Month are a special time to recognize and thank our heroes, the Red Cross staff, volunteers, and donors who give their time and resources to provide relief, hope, and comfort to our local residents. Across the country and around the world, the American Red Cross responds to disasters big and small. In fact, every 8 minutes, the organization responds to a community home fire, disaster, providing shelter, food, emotional support, and other necessities to those affected. It collects nearly 40% of the nation's blood supply, provides 24-hour support to military members, veterans, and their families, teaches millions life-saving skills such as lifeguarding and CPR, and through its Restoring Family Links program, connects family members separated by crisis, conflict, or migration. The Thomas Fire event, the largest wildfire in California history, forced resident evacuations, caused significant loss and damage at homes and structures, bringing heartbreak and turning our communities upside down. We applaud and extend our thanks and appreciation to our Red Cross heroes here in Ventura County, who quickly mobilized alongside local government, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, area businesses, and other disaster partner organizations to coordinate response and recovery efforts to our impacted communities. We thank the Red Cross for opening up shelters for those displaced by the disaster, distributing hot meals and basic relief supplies, and ensure comfort and care, providing vital health services, emotional support, spiritual care, and assisting residents create recovery plans. We dedicate the month of March to all of those who support the American Red Cross. Thank you very much. Right. And would both of you please like to fill us in a little bit more? Thank you, Melissa.
Chair Foy, members of the board, Mr. Powers. I'm here today in the capacity of the Ventura County Red Cross Board Chair, and I want to thank you, as I do every year, for supporting the Red Cross and annually this event about recognition of Red Cross Month. Unfortunately, our leadership is in transition, and so I'm here representing the Red Cross with Norita, but I want to thank you. Each year we do recognize the Red Cross Month, and each year we always highlight something that's happened. Unfortunately, this past year, since we saw you last, there's been a lot that's happened. And our Red Cross staff, not only local volunteers, but those from across the entire nation, have been deployed to numerous events. Locally, our Red Cross chapter of Ventura County, as well as the Pacific chapter, our Santa Barbara sister county, who we participate greatly in a lot of events, was deployed to the California wildfires. It was involved in the series of hurricanes. It was involved in deployment to the Las Vegas event. And all those events were challenging for our volunteers because of the enormity of those events. But the Thomas Fire was probably the most challenging for our local volunteers, mostly because a response that they normally attend is there's deployment, and it's in a community that they don't reside in. And as you've heard this morning over and over again about the trauma that comes with serving your own community. And so my hat goes off to our Red Cross volunteers and staff who were responding hand in hand with our first responders to our Thomas Fire events, our debris flow events. They were supporting their roles as Red Cross volunteers and staff while they were consoling and supporting family members and colleagues and friends in their own community. It was a tough event, and I was able to watch it firsthand as they were in we had a command center at our Human Service Agency. I was able to see the value of this team coming together. I'm not sure that you're aware that there were almost 1,000 volunteers that supported the Thomas Fire events between Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. Those Red Cross volunteers came from 47 states. Wow. And a significant number of those were our Santa Barbara and our Ventura volunteers. And during that period of time, we opened 800 cases, approximately 800 cases, providing case management support, recovery planning, providing linkage to other supports, providing spiritual support, as well as mental health services. We also opened over 650 cases providing financial support. And we did that in concert with our government agencies and partners, as well as a number of nonprofits and businesses across our community. So I want to thank our local heroes, because we certainly were Red Cross strong throughout this past year of responding to disasters and events, but also in response to our own community. And so when we talk about the humanitarian mission of the Red Cross, it's symbolized by the face of our volunteers. And so I'd like to introduce you to one of our caseworkers who was heavily involved in the Thomas Fire event, Norita Kasu, and she's going to share her story.
Yes, it's been an amazing experience working with our county. I've been on a lot of operations out of state and out of the area, and I always wondered how we would do in a disaster. And I have to say, we were amazing. The county, the other partners that we work with, the Red Cross, we all rose to the occasion. The families that came in, I opened the Oxnard shelter, and the tons of volunteers that came in those first hours, and the donations that were given. And everybody was coming up to me saying, what can I bring? What can I do? And I'm so proud to be part of the Red Cross and a citizen of Ventura County. And I want to thank you for all you do to support us.
Rita, thank you very much. I just want to pass on the first 48 hours or so of the volunteer work at the fairgrounds. Of what a challenge that was. You had homeless people coming in, you had fire victims coming in, you had no power, you had issues of heat, and it was a real challenge and those volunteers were just tough, you know, in terms of hanging in there. So thank you very much for being part of a great team of volunteers. We really appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you too. I want to thank Melissa because I know we're talking about the Thomas Fire and we're talking about all the things that the Red Cross has done. But Melissa, you've been year after year, you know, at the Red Cross, and I want to commend you too. I know it's a Red Cross month for Ventura County, but we also should be Melissa Red Cross for the County of Ventura because you do excellent work, and I've worked with you putting smoke detectors, you know, and every time I see you, you're doing something good for the community and especially for the Red Cross. And I also want to thank all the volunteers, hundreds of volunteers that helped in the Thomas Fire and also on other things that the Red Cross does. But I just want to thank you so much, young lady, and thank you for sharing with us today. You know, it's outstanding that we have such volunteers here in Ventura County. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supervisor Zaragoza, and since you opened it up, there's a segue. On Saturday, March 24th, this coming Saturday, we are doing our home fire campaign in the West Ventura area, and we'll be located at the Ventura Avenue Adult Center off North Ventura Avenue, and we have a team of Red Crossers who are coming out to install fire detectors, do education and outreach and awareness in the homes of our citizens in West Ventura, and at the same time they'll be saving lives, so we'll leave these flyers.
And in the past you've worked with the firefighters and numerous volunteers too, you know, that young folks too that you train and mentor to and give into the community, which I think is outstanding. Thank you.
Working with Jim McGee was amazing. I don't know if we've replaced him or not yet.
It's going to be about 6 months before we replace Jim. Actually, we have identified an interim CEO, Jess Wishen, who has overseen our disaster response, and she was involved with our local Thomas Fire response. She's going to be in an interim role for 2 to 3 months. There'll be another internal Red Cross staff member who fulfills the next 2 to 3 months, and in approximately a 6-month period of time, we will be hiring a final CEO.
Well, thank you. You all do such a just fabulous job for our community. Thank you.
I too also want to just say thank you, having gone to the shelters during the fires and seen right away the Red Cross there and doing their work, and wonderful volunteers from all over the place, right, coming to Ventura for a change. So it's just so great to see that you are there for us, and just wonderful volunteer spirit. You can't beat it. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Powers.
Thank you. Just to Melissa, what you just heard too is that she's leading this board and this organization right now during a time of transition. And so I don't think a lot of people know that, but Melissa, that takes a lot of time and energy on your part. And it's good for us, it's good for the county, it's good for the Red Cross. So thank you for doing that.
On top of all the other things that you
I know,
do
right?
in the
Oh yeah, your day job. Yeah.
You
And
put
then
up with
Narita-
bury her day job?
Yeah, right. That shelter that Supervisor Bennett mentioned, I remember, I don't think I'll ever forget that night, being there at 1, 2 in the morning, and it was dark, it was smoky, there was no power, it was crowded, people were traumatized, and the only beacon they had to go to was Red Cross volunteers. I don't think I'll ever forget it, and they were so grateful, so thank you.
And Melissa, thank you. It's also in Spanish and English, your flyer here, which is really great. Mm-hmm.
1:30 would be great.
2 minutes, Speaker.
Yes. Ready, let's go. All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Chair Foy, board members, Mr. Powers. For the record, my name is Jeff Pratt. I'm with the Public Works Agency. I'm joined by several of my colleagues in Public Works who might be getting up to answer questions. I'll introduce them now. Glenn Shepard with Watershed, Sergio Vargas with Watershed, and Ray Gutierrez with our Development Inspection Services. So I'm here to talk to you about modifying our floodplain ordinance. These modifications are necessary because FEMA has sent us a nasty gram, which I'll talk about in a bit. But I should start out by saying they're all administrative in nature. This is pure administrivia, most of which we've been doing, if not all, arguably. With one exception, and I'll point that out in a second too, because I'll ask for your board's guidance on that. But in any case, recall that your board has told us, or at least it's been our interpretation, that when we comply with regulations outside, we're not lavishing money on these things. It's minimum necessary to comply. And with that said, we have a flagship flood insurance program here at the county, and it's second to none. We're in rarefied atmosphere with a CRS rating of 5. There aren't very many counties of any across the nation. And the one that stands out that's really reached rarefied atmosphere bought all the floodplain in their county. It's up in Northern California. Don't remember which one, but they're the highest rated in the nation and the only one at that rating. It's a flood insurance program, and what FEMA wants us to do with our ordinance and with all ordinances is reduce damages so we reduce federal liability after a disaster. So we've made a number of changes. They're described to you in your board letter. We have the new ordinance attached, and then Exhibit 1 goes through a summary of the key elements that have been changed, arguably changed. They've just been restructured, so it makes it easier for one of the people at FEMA to read the thing. But one item that slipped through because we thought it was a FEMA requirement, a new FEMA requirement, is in the new ordinance in section 5.4A1. If you'll turn with me to that section, I'll explain it to you. And that is, or actually it's just A1. So we actually suggested that these manufactured homes be elevated 2 feet above the base flood because we thought that was the new building code and that was an NFIP requirement. It is not. We suggest moving it back to 1 foot so it's consistent with the rest of our requirements for all other structures within the floodplain. Recall that the base flood elevation already has a factor of safety built into it, and the 1 foot that your board has decided to put on everything else is an additional factor of safety. So we don't feel that it's necessary at this time, and until it becomes a building code requirement or a floodplain requirement or an NFIP requirement, we suggest leaving it where it is for consistency's sake. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question? I know that a lot of what you do when you're looking at laws on flood control are to see that new development doesn't impact other developments and get into the floodplain. But I'm wondering about the setback from creeks that we're looking at here in the ordinance, doing some changes on that. Talking about what the distance should be, 20 feet on each side of the bank. And when I look at what's happened in Montecito and finding that a lot of the houses, or all of them that were destroyed, were within 100 feet of the stream bank, it makes me think that that should be, at a minimum, it should be 100 feet.
So this is talking about, I assume you're talking about the third bullet on page 3 of 3, which describes the changes to the ordinance?
Yeah, so we're looking at 5.2.8.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, those are the same thing. Thank you. So what's happening here is that this is an area of shallow flooding. It would be an A0 zone, so everything's less than a foot, and they don't define a floodway. And the reason they're asking for this is that when they define a flood, so when FEMA defines a floodway anywhere else, they go out and run the model, and they find the extent of the floodway. Then they move infinitely high walls in equidistantly until the floodplain raises a foot. That's called the base flood elevation, or BFE. Your board has put another foot on that just for a moment. But back to the BFE. With the AOs, there's no BFEs. If there isn't a BFE, they want you to model that same floodplain and determine a BFE for it. So that's what they're talking about in 20-foot increments. And if you don't, I assume that if you don't do it within 20 feet, your flows are so low that they're negligible. So I think that's what they're talking about.
Yeah,
here.
and specifically residential development, which this calls out to for residential development.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems that this change could allow for more development closer to the creeks.
No, the development's allowed there. This is just asking you to define this actually restricts it more because it asks you to define a floodway, and once you do that, you can't build inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So recall that when they move the walls in, the floodplain is the entire distance across and the floodway is where the wall stopped when it reaches 1 foot, and we absolutely keep people out of the floodway when they're developing. They're allowed to do the fringes, but not in the floodway. So what this is doing is defining essentially a de facto floodway and saying you either have to elevate above that or you can't build within it. So it's actually a little more restrictive than.
And this is 5.2.8 is when it's not a floodway, when a floodway hasn't been defined.
That's correct.
That's when this takes effect.
And that's in the A0 area, which means it's shallow flooding. It's not, and then.
So that was the question. If there's no floodway that's been defined and you have development near the creeks, would this new change allow for development to be closer to the creeks? That's how I was reading it, and that's why I'm wondering.
So the A0 area you're allowed to develop in, this requirement restricts development further restricts so in that sense, it's less development.
Okay.
Is it nearer the creeks or farther?
Yeah, it says to establish a setback from the stream bank equal to 5 times the width of the stream, or 20 feet on each side from the top of the bank, whichever is greater. And what they were referring to in Montecito was the top of the bank, 100 feet. So if we had something in here where when we have a stream but at a minimum 100 feet from the top of the bank, these requirements or that. And again, I just getting back that here's an opportunity to help avoid major debris flows, not just flooding.
I'm not sure you do that, Jeff, because you may just there's no possibility on somebody's property to even do any kind of housing or anything, right?
Yeah, well, this is an either or. So you either develop the base flood elevation, or you set back. If lacking that, if you find it simpler. But in most of these cases, this is if it's undefined, it's shallow flooding, and which means there's probably not a stream bank to begin with. That's just the way the California model ordinance is written, and we've suggested adopting it in whole.
Because if it was a real heavy flow,
there would be a floodway defined and a floodplain defined.
Right.
And
okay. And we have problems in these areas only where mainly heavy flow areas, right?
That's correct. The shallow flow they ignore, and they don't go to that extra step of trying to figure it out because it's an extra expense that they can just foist on the locals.
But it is a stream bank, so, whatever is defining the stream, so whether it's in a floodway or not a floodway, the fact that it's a stream bank and having that setback from a stream, and that's good development patterns anyway. You don't want, for other reasons beyond just flooding, you don't want to be too close within a stream bed. So, yes.
What if you have a levee? What if you have a levee then?
There would not be a levee, I wouldn't think, because it's not considered a floodway, so it's just a stream.
So let me maybe describe a situation which might illustrate the point.
Mm-hmm.
This is shallow flooding. It's not associated. It's sheet flowing across. We know, and we don't have a great idea where it's sheet flow. So on alluvial fans, where we have some floodways defined, but others not, we show that they're talking about these sorts of areas. There aren't going to be defined streams near them.
Okay, and as I'm saying, this is my thought now, looking beyond just what you're using right now in terms of we don't want to add development because it will raise the water level and all of that, but just the idea that we now have stream banks and we should have setbacks from those top of the stream bank. This for the benefit of not the flooding so much, but the debris flow. So that's where I'm looking at. If this ordinance and the way that it's being written now doesn't take that into account or could take into account, that's something I would like to have considered.
Oh, I see. So this is so setbacks from stream banks in general. This is the only place I recall, and I haven't read it in that much detail, that talks about giving you that option in stream banks. So for the other stream banks, that's a different. So they aren't considered because this is a flood insurance ordinance, not an environmental protection ordinance so much. But I suppose it's possible to.
Yeah, I mean, it's saying, it's either 5 times the width of the stream or it's 20 feet away from the top of the stream bank. And I'm just saying 20 feet, I don't know if that's really going to take care of the issues that, happened in Montecito, for example.
It probably wouldn't, because those were deep, well-defined channels with well-defined 500-year floodplains.
Right, and that gets you back to the definition, and I don't know if it's in here, of a stream bank. I would assume it's something that's related to, Army Corps would call this a stream if we were requiring a 20-foot setback from a stream bank. So I'm just saying here might be our opportunity to put in a little, regulation for new development next to stream banks for the purposes of avoiding debris flows.
Okay.
So
let's move on to the next one.
Mr. Chair, so Jeff, you're looking here to consolidate the ordinances with the FEMA and also to amend and adopt a new format, numbering system and so forth. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, sir. So we have a sort of a Rube Goldberg contraption, an old ordinance with 4 amendments that we've just cobbled together over the years. And we saw this as a good time to throw that out and start fresh. California has a model ordinance that meets FEMA's minimums, so you don't have to argue with government central about special use of different terms and language. So we thought it best to do it this way.
The numbering system would be compatible and so forth?
Yes, sir. It would be easier to find people trained in this, if you move from agency to agency in floodplain management.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for coming to my office and explaining a bunch of this and making sure that I understood that we're also taking this from the California's ordinances as well, correct? So we're not just creating this on our own niddly-willy. We're actually taking the standards from the California state for this, which is important, and then also working to ensure that we're hitting all the right points for FEMA to make sure that we get the correct insurance.
That's correct.
And this is going to be done by April the 4th? Is that
Yes.
Okay.
With a gun at our head after a major disaster, they send a letter like this just because the maps at Lake Sherwood were revised.
Okay.
This is just unprecedented. I've never seen it in my 30-plus years of working with FEMA.
Yeah.
So are we?
Okay.
Do we have public
So you need
comment, or-
Yeah, hang on, this is a public hearing, so we
Okay.
need to open it up to public. Do we have any public speaker cards to this? No, we don't have any? Nobody wants to speak, so then we'll close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion.
We'll make a motion. We have a motion, and we have a second. All right.
And if possible, I would like to know about the zones next to stream beds, top of the bank of stream beds, and what's out there in terms of being able to, if regulation is needed, based on specifically what happened in Montecito. If we have other examples of that where houses are approved within 100 feet, in the same type of situation, it would be good to know so we don't go doing the same thing over again and potentially risking people's lives.
We'll get with you and get you that info.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What's that? You want to read that in? Okay.
Please. So this is an ordinance of the County of Ventura repealing and reenacting the Ventura County Floodplain Management Ordinance. And then we have correspondence that came in from Diane Underhill that has been passed out to the board for item 25.
Okay. Thank you very much. There you go, Jeff. Thank you. Appreciate your work. And all right. So I think that's our last item. We'll